All right, folks. We all know that one of the most common mishaps in hunting is damage to your rifle scope. Last year, I found the solution to that problem with the Stealthy Hunter rifle cover. It wraps around your scope and actions securely to protect it from getting knocked off of zero or even severely damaged. Stealthy Hunter also has a glassing pad and a wide variety of supplements for the outdoorsman, such as protein powder, CBD products, turmeric, and gut health supplements. They also make a lightweight trauma kit weighing in at just 14 ounces that includes everything you need and nothing you don't for all of your backcountry medical emergencies. To shop all of their equipment and supplements, go to stealthyhunter.com and enter the discount code at checkout, The Northern Hunter, to save on your order today. All Stealthy Hunter equipment is proudly made in the USA.
You're listening to the Northern Hunter Podcast, home of all things hunting, fishing, and outdoors in Alaska.
All right, everybody, welcome back to the show. My name is James Payne.
I'm Dalton Gray.
I'm Mariah Humphreys.
And today we have the great pleasure of sitting down and speaking with local Fairbanks resident and host of the J&J podcast here with us, Mr. Jeff Day.
Hey,
how you doing?
Good, thanks.
All right, yeah, we appreciate you taking time out of your day to come sit down with us, and you're here to talk some hunting, to tell some stories, see how things go. I'm very excited for that. So before we get too far, though, if you're listening to this and you have any questions about anything we talk about or anything we've talked about in the past, make sure you contact us through our social medias. If you search at The Northern Hunter on either Facebook or Instagram, you'll find us there. You can hit us at an email directly to info@thenorthernhunter, or if you go to our website, thenorthernhunter.com, we have a great contact us button there. Makes it real easy. Just fill out some info and you'll be able to get a message out to us. And if you'd like to support what we're doing, we have a pretty awesome shop page there, Mo built for us. We got some merch on there. You can go in there. We got t-shirts, hoodies, hats, and everything. So that really helps support the show and what we're doing. And if you'd like to help us out while you're on your adventures,
While you're on your hunt, you need to protect your rifle with a rifle cover from Stealthy Hunter, which is our good friend Ryan Lampers. They also sell glassing pads to keep your posterior dry in this upcoming wet moose season, right, Jeff?
Amen.
And they also sell supplements and nutritional supplements geared for the outdoorsman, such as CBD oils, the good kind, and turmeric and protein powders and different things that are geared towards joint health and gut health and muscle recovery from all that packing that none of us like to do for moose hunting.
yeah, making sure you can get out there and do it next season.
Yeah, and be sure that when you shop from Stealthy Hunter over there and Stealthy Nutrition, that you use our discount code at checkout in the promo code box. That is The Northern Hunter. The Northern Hunter. No caps, no space. We've had some folks get tripped up on that. We apologize, but it's not that hard. And and then our next sponsor is Yukon River Knives, based out of Texas. They support a local Alaska missionary with all of their proceeds. You can shop any of their knives from the ATK rifle sling and knife combo, which is one of my personal favorites. You can also get the Hunter and the small game knife. Those three are their flagship products. They also have different designs from different knife makers that they've contributed to the lineup over the years. The Sendero pack knife, the Sendero classic knife, the butchering knife, and so on. And if you're shopping from Yukon River Knives, you can also use our discount, the same as the last one, the Northern Hunter, at checkout. No caps, no space. You can get a significant discount on your knife order there. And then Hammer Bullets is our next one. Same discount code. And we want to just reiterate what we always say about Hammer. They always seem to be in stock.
Yep.
They're accurate too.
They shoot
Ready to
good.
ship.
They're very easy to load for. They're always in stock, and it's supporting a great couple of guys down there in Montana. Copper bullets. These are monometal bullets that perform like bonded lead core bullets after impact. They dump a lot of energy. They have a large permanent wound cavity, but they also penetrate on par and arguably even better than traditional monometal design bullets.
Yep.
So easy to load for, but somewhat experimental. So be sure to use caution. But if you decide to go with Hammer bullets like we do, You can also use the discount code The Northern Hunter at checkout. We're also partnered with Baitum 907 for all of our bear bait attractants and lures and trapping lures and moose hunting lures that are legal to use in Alaska. Jeff, if you want to use any moose lures.
Yeah.
I'm not sure if you need that.
For rookies.
It's for rookies. Well, it's not just for rookies. However, if you want to shop from Baitum 907, our local Alaska attractants and lures company to support Jess and us, you can shop from Baitum 907 and use the discount code TNHP at checkout. And then last but not least is Weatherby Rifles based in Sheridan, Wyoming. No discount code there, but we do ask that if you buy a rifle from Weatherby, that you let them know that we sent you.
A rifle for wabbit hunting.
You caught me. Yeah.
No, they are phenomenal rifles. They're some of the best in the biz.
I just shot mine 2 days ago.
Yeah,
I'm all ready for moose.
Yep. Definitely let them know we sent you. And we appreciate all the support from you guys, getting the emails and seeing the love from you guys. We really appreciate it. We're going to talk a lot about moose hunting and bear hunting today, but there is a big caribou hunt going on right now.
Yes.
And I figured, given the time, we should give a slight update on that just for anybody listening. And a little bit of education, too.
Yeah.
So the 40-mile hunt, we've talked about it several times on the show here, opened up,
August 10th.
And I believe it only went for 4 days, almost 4 days. Closed on midnight on the 13th.
Yep. 4 days.
So those areas, I should say this, it closed in zones 1 and 4.
Yes.
Those areas, 680 bulls was the final count for that area.
Wow.
How many cows?
I don't know the exact number of cows, but we're going to get into that. So just for anybody listening, at the time of today's recording, which is the 24th, I called the hotline, and the zones 2 and 3 are still open. They're scheduled to be open until September 30th or until quota is met. So make sure you are calling before you go out, because they've already exceeded the quotas in zones 1 and 4. Who knows what's going to happen? So,
yeah.
But here's the interesting part. We got some reports from up there off the zone 1 area.
Yeah.
And seemed like a lot of people were playing nice. And I think a lot of people, it sounded like it was a much better hunt this year.
Yeah.
A lot more courtesy was involved as far as shooting over people's heads and things like that sometimes happens. But there were some citations sent out. We'll just say that. Not everybody followed the exact rules. And I don't know the exact nature of why, but just for anybody listening, if you're going to hunt in Alaska, because this is a hunt that pretty much anybody in the state can do, ignorance is not an excuse to not follow the regs in the state of Alaska.
Right.
They will not use that. If you just say you didn't know you couldn't do that, that's not an excuse. So what we're going to do is pick through just a couple of these and explain just the details so that hopefully this doesn't happen next year. But 29 citations were given out in 3 days. Of those citations, the reasons were wanton waste, failure to salvage edible meat, removing antlers before the meat, failure to validate the tag, failure to leave evidence of sex, or wrong sex shot. So
there's them cows I was talking about.
Yeah, so there were definitely cows that were taken out. So first of all, if you're going to hunt caribou in a state where, both genders of the species have antlers, make sure you know the difference.
Yeah.
Make sure we've harped about that on the show a little bit. Make sure you're looking at pictures. You're looking at there's a lot of great resources out there to help you learn. Test yourself. Make sure,
Well, we talked about that not that long ago, didn't we?
We did. We touched on it. I think it was like 3 or 4 episodes ago.
Yeah.
And we've actually talked about it before that too. Back in the How to Hunt Alaska chapter.
How to Hunt Alaska.
Track.
Well, and that's a big part of it. Yeah. You go after the big ones. But a couple of these other ones. So the failure to salvage edible meat and wanton waste.
Yeah.
Alaska is very strict as far as that goes.
Oh, yeah.
They will, and don't think they won't find your kill site, because they will. So if they look at your quarters and your game bags and they determine they want to see where you shot this animal, they will go back there. And I have heard stories that if they can take a pocket knife and scrape it along the bone and get enough meat to make like a single stick of jerky, you can technically get a wanton waste ticket for that. So if you are going to be, rolling out the ribs or anything like that in the field, if you're going to be taking leaving the spine and all that stuff, and you're not taking the whole carcass home with you, make sure you're doing a very good and thorough job. Not only because that meat is, important and delicious, and it's your responsibility as a hunter to bring it out of the woods, but also you will get hemmed up on it in the state of Alaska.
Yeah.
The other one I thought was interesting and may have been complete ignorance was removing antlers before meat.
Right. Right.
The big reason that's a rule is for trying to avoid poaching as much as possible.
Right.
But if you're new to the state or new to this hunt and you have to take multiple trips out to get the animal out of the woods, say you're on a wheeler or something like that, the head does have to be on the final ride out. You cannot take the head out before the edible meat. And it's easy to understand when you've got a lot of hunters from the lower 48 coming up to hunt caribou why they wouldn't want to leave the head there. That's why I say this could be complete ignorance, because for people that don't know or haven't hunted in the lower 48 very much, there are tons of stories of people leaving parts of a deer in the woods after a kill to hike back to camp and come back and get it. And on public land in some states, it's so small that in the time it takes you to go back to the truck and come back to the kill site, there are stories of other people finding that dead animal and taking it.
Yep.
And you'll hear people advise to bring like bike locks and things like that to lock your deer to a tree so that can't happen. So I could understand why somebody who might come from that area might want to bring the rack out first just to make sure it doesn't get picked up by another four-wheeler or something like that.
Yeah, or if they're paranoid about a grizzly bear claiming it.
Right.
And in their mind, well, I'm not going to fly all the meat home anyway, so why don't I just get the rack out of here first, because I am flying that home.
Yep.
Right. But
so it's easy to understand, but that is a rule, and that is something that you have to follow, is to get all the edible meat out before you remove the antlers, or at least at the same time.
Right.
And the last one, or the last two, I should say, is failure to validate tag. Obviously, that one is kind of obvious. When you pull the trigger, you draw blood, got to notch your tag. There's really no...
How do you use it next time?
Huh? Right?
I was asked that. I don't know anything about
that. In case the listeners didn't quite catch that, do you want to repeat that one more time?
No, I don't.
No.
Let the record show.
But you do have to notch your tag at the time of the kill.
Yeah.
And you do have to leave evidence of sex on the hind quarter as you're taking it out of the field. Now, once you get it back to your house, you're butchering it up to put in your freezer. You can take that off, throw it away, but you have to leave something connected to one of the hindquarters to prove that it is the animal that you.
There's a really good way to do that I learned not very long ago, just a couple of years ago. I learned it is possible on a male specimen of ungulate species, whether it's sheep or moose or caribou or whatever it is, deer, that when you're splitting the pelvis, taking an animal apart, right? If you're just taking off the quarters, if you skin out the crown jewels, it's possible to split those and leave one testicle on each hind quarter. And that is a really good way to keep yourself from getting in trouble, because what can happen is if you're on a fly out hunt and you have to fly loads of shuttle meat out, well, the trooper might be at the airstrip waiting for that plane to land.
Right.
And if that plane lands and what meat is in the cub or the 180 or whatever the airplane is, if that meat does not have evidence of sex on it, then he can write you up for it.
Yep.
Technically speaking.
Yeah.
Some of them might exercise discretion and say, well, look, there's only half the moose, bring out the other half. Let's just count it all when it's here, right? But there are instances where I've heard of that happening. I haven't had it happen to me, but just to be redundant, and it doesn't hurt anything, and it's not that hard to do. I personally, that's how I do it now, as I leave one evidence of sex portion on each hind quarter.
You can cut up the meat and leave evidence of sex on each portion of meat.
On two hind quarters. Yeah.
You need to get a hobby.
Well,
This is his hobby.
that's part of my job. That's
Right.
That's part of my job is to make sure that I cover my bases.
Well, and to that point too, when you do have it just on one quarter,
Yeah.
now you've got, a fairly floppy little extra section on one quarter, which in the transportation process could get snagged on something,
Yes.
could get torn off. And
Yes.
if that happens, even if that's rare, if you're riding out on your four-wheeler and something gets snagged, or let's just say the evidence gets stuck in the rack of the wheeler and the quarter falls off the back, right?
Right.
If that comes apart and comes detached, now you're in trouble.
Yeah.
Now even your best efforts aren't
Mhm.
worth anything. So I like that. I like what you just said there. I like that that method. I'm going to start doing that
At
too.
some point, I'm going to have to, the next animal that we're all together, I'll have to show you how I do that.
Mhm.
It's not the easiest thing in the world if you've never done it before, but once you know how to do it, it's really,
It
really
doesn't
easy.
seem that terribly hard.
Yeah.
I could already see how to
The
it
other
can be
thing
done.
I was going to mention too is so that these common ones that we saw written up in the first 4 days of that caribou hunt, well, really the only 4 days of that caribou hunt this year, wanton waste. If you have meat on the carcass that is salvageable, edible meat that they define in the regs, which they do clearly define in the Fish and Game regs,
They do.
what is required to be salvaged. If you have salvageable meat left in the field, that's wanton waste.
Mm-hmm.
Well, if you brought out what you thought was all the meat, they're not just going to write you up for wanton waste. They're going to write you up for wanton waste and transporting the rack before all edible meat was salvaged. So you're not just going to get one citation if you leave meat on the carcass. You'll get 2.
Yeah.
So keep that in mind.
Yep.
And you know what? It's your fault at the end of the day.
Mhm.
It's your responsibility to make sure that you are schooled up on the regulations.
Absolutely.
So make sure you're on the right side of the law.
Alaska is a very lenient place to hunt, I would say, as far as the rules we do have. You're allowed to do a lot.
Yeah.
You're allowed to
Right.
wheeler a lot of places. You're
Center
allowed to
fire
shoot
rifle
a lot.
hunting.
Yeah, you're
Yeah.
allowed to use a lot of calibers. They let you pretty much, they're not super stringent on a lot of details.
Yeah.
But the ones that they are
Yeah.
very stringent on it, and they will enforce it every time.
Mhm.
And they should.
If they have to go back in to police the whole thing, they get compensated
Yeah.
through the courts.
Yep.
I mean, the fines are just, they just go up exponentially
Yep.
from there.
Mhm.
Absolutely.
People that shoot the wrong sex
Mm-hmm.
moose
Yeah.
and they butcher half butcher or at least come out.
Right.
Or
Mhm.
actually,
Oh,
I
yeah.
should say bear. Bear's the biggie. So
Yeah.
they shoot a grizzly bear because it was coming in on their game or something, and they come out and say, "Oh man, it was tearing us up. It was about to kill us." And
Mm-hmm.
they the first thing they'll ask is, "Where is it?"
Yeah.
If you didn't bring it out and left it in there,
Right.
and they have to go in and salvage it, they
Yeah.
get paid for that. How do they get paid for that? You're going to get the wanton waste, and
Yeah.
you're going
Yeah.
you tell it to the judge, and it's expensive from there.
I've told this story before, but I shot a moose 2 years ago, sublegal bull, too
Mhm.
small. But you don't want to do.
Happens.
You don't want to do.
I don't know
But
much about that. But
I,
go ahead.
I happened to have. Yeah.
Sorry.
Yeah. I happened to have cell service where the bull died up on a hill. So I called, confessed, complied,
Yep.
cut it all up, hauled it the 8 miles or whatever it was to the truck. It was a long day.
By hand, right?
Oh yeah. By hand on my back.
You hiked it out?
No.
I was going to say,
I'm just being,
nice.
I'm just being
Barefoot both ways.
Uphill.
A foot and a half of snow, 20 below.
No, it was a Wheeler and Argo journey. But got it back to the truck. It was a long, nasty, wet day. Got it back, hauled it into the troopers, turned myself in, having already talked to him, turned it in with all the meat. And, he said, you've got to cut that thing up like you would if you were taking it home.
Mhm.
Don't skimp. Because if you skimp, well, then we're going to get you for that. But when I did it all right like that, I got a $300 fine and I had to turn the meat in.
Yep.
And that was my
Yep.
moose for the year.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Now, if I had not done, if any of those steps that I just said I did to make sure I did it right, once I knew I did it wrong, it would have been a minimum $1,000 fine
Mhm.
and the moose,
Yep.
and probably
Yeah.
a couple $1,000 more on top of that.
And then
No.
if they wanted to, they could have taken some of your equipment too.
Yeah.
Take your equipment, take your hunting rights, everything. I do want to make a point that even if you do all of that,
Mhm.
there is no guarantee they will be lenient with you, but it is more likely.
Yeah.
So just understand, Alaska is very strict with its rules, and the sad thing, I'll say this: the sad thing is that when you get a citation, you fail to follow the hunting rules. You do have to give up the animal, right? You have to turn in the meat.
Mhm.
You have to turn in everything.
Yeah.
But I will say this: Alaska does it right because the meat does still get utilized.
It does.
And when you look at a lot of other states, when they're talking like a lot of these grizzly areas down in Lower 48,
Yeah.
if you have to DLP a grizzly, they'll destroy everything on that grizzly.
Really?
They'll cut up the hide to where it's not usable. They'll
Mhm.
they'll crush the skull,
Mhm.
and it's because they don't want people taking it home, selling it,
Yeah.
making it a trophy.
They don't want to go into a fur auction,
Right.
which is what happens up here.
Whereas in
Right.
Alaska,
you can go buy your bear
yeah,
back.
if you have to
out.
DLP a bear, you have a hunt violation of some
Mhm.
sort. That meat and that hide and that skull and everything, it still gets taken, still gets utilized. I really like that about the state. I think that's a good thing.
Yeah.
So,
I agree.
Well, before we get off the 40-mile thing, I was talking to this last weekend. I was up in a village doing some work with a guy, and he had gone out for the 40-mile hunt on the open weekend there up in Zone 1.
mm-hmm.
And he and his daughter and I think a few other people, I don't know, they were out there on a wheeler or two. And they hunted the first day, nothing. Second day in the morning at like 10 o'clock, they found a caribou
Mm-hmm.
dead.
Oh,
Still good.
a cow.
It was a bull, big bull. I haven't seen
Really?
pictures, but it was a really decent sized bull. And they were cleaning it and couldn't figure. They're like, somebody. It must have been like behind the one that they shot or something.
Yeah.
And ran off and died somewhere else. They're trying to figure this out.
Yeah.
It was shot in the head.
Really?
Anyway, they cleaned it up, took it out, and tagged it because it was good meat.
Well, good on them.
I
Yeah, good on
suppose.
them.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, it
Interesting.
was, and there was other hunters in the area like before they salvaged it because it was like bloated from being there for a night and stuff. They went and
Mhm.
talked to other hunters they could find and see, and like, no, I don't want it. If you guys want it, whatever. But no, we haven't seen anybody. But 10 o'clock, so it'd been shot the day before.
Wow.
Mm.
And anyway, yeah, no, that was
I'm glad they were able to take care of that.
it could have been a stray bullet,
It happens a lot.
but
It happens
I
a
mean,
lot.
in the head, I don't know.
I mean, chances are low, but never zero.
Yeah. I was gonna say
I
it's
know.
possible.
It's possible.
Yeah.
But final update on that. So because the 680 bulls were taken in those zones, that far overshot the quota that was designated for those zones.
Right.
As of right now, there's no update saying they're going to change the quotas for the other zones. However, they might close it by emergency order if they reach.
Mhm.
I believe the most they want taken out of the herd this year is 1,000.
Mhm.
So if they reach too close to that number on the count, they're going to close it due to emergency order. So again, call the hotline. Make sure you're informed before you go out there hunting.
Yep.
And they said they're not sure what's going to happen with the winter hunt because of how many bulls were taken out. So it may be a decreased number of tags given out, or I should say a decreased quota, or they might cancel altogether. But that update's not going to come out till October. So just keep an eye out for that. And other than that, just make sure you're following the rules. Make sure you know the rules. You're
Mhm.
educated, hunting safe, hunting smart, and making sure that everybody's just doing the right thing out there.
Yeah.
So
Absolutely.
So why don't we take a real quick break and then we'll dive in. Hammer Bullets produces what we at the Northern Hunter consider to be the most premium and best working monolithic bullets on the market today. These bullets are easy to load, extremely accurate, and best of all, they're always in stock and ready to ship. The guys at Hammer designed them so that after penetrating the hide of an animal, it sheds its petals, initiating a massive energy dump while retaining the rear shank for maximum penetration. These bullets are built with 100% focus on how they perform on game, and their proprietary designs produce great BCs with specialized pressure grooves for amazing inherent accuracy and speed. They have a minimum expansion velocity of 1,800 feet per second, which allows for long-range shots, but with no maximum velocity, making them perfect for every cartridge from your granddaddy's old 30-30 to the high-velocity round like the Weatherby 30-378 without having to worry about your bullet failing. To view their expansive selection and find the perfect match for your hunting needs, go to hammerbullets.com and use discount code TheNorthernHunter to drop the hammer on your next adventure.
All right, folks. We all know that one of the most common mishaps in hunting is damage to your rifle scope. Last year, I found the solution to that problem with the Stealthy Hunter rifle cover. It wraps around your scope and actions securely to protect it from getting knocked off of zero or even severely damaged. Stealthy Hunter also has a glassing pad and a wide variety of supplements for the outdoorsman, such as protein powder, CBD products, turmeric, and gut health supplements. They also make a lightweight trauma kit weighing in at just 14 ounces that includes everything you need and nothing you don't for all of your backcountry medical emergencies. To shop all of their equipment and supplements, go to stealthyhunter.com and enter the discount code at checkout, The Northern Hunter, to save on your order today. All Stealthy Hunter equipment is proudly made in the USA.
All right, Jeff. So thanks for coming by again.
No problem.
Excited to talk to you. So you've been you live here in Fairbanks.
I do.
Hunt out of Fairbanks.
I do.
Why don't you give people a little backstory on that? How long you been here? What do you do?
I've been in Alaska for, I think it's 22, 23 years, somewhere around there.
Nice.
Yeah, I was a Christian missionary.
Okay.
And for about 8 years, and then I have my own business here, trucking, ice road trucker.
Yeah.
A little construction too.
There you go. You ever been on the show?
On this show?
No, the Ice Road Trucker Show.
Yeah. Actually,
Is that a sensitive
interesting
topic?
story. Yeah, well, they were doing all their filming. We were actually moving all their freight. But we won't say that.
Right.
Moving on.
Right, moving on.
Cut that out.
We do it for a living now.
Yeah, there you go.
Yeah,
so you came up to Alaska as a missionary?
I came up to help missionaries, Christian missionaries, and
Gotcha.
ended up becoming a missionary.
Okay, nice. What part of the state?
On the west side of down in Lower Yukon.
Okay, awesome. Right on.
Right, yeah.
Where'd you grow up at?
Western New York.
Western New York.
Yep.
Okay, I thought I sensed a little bit of that.
You can hear it, huh?
Yep. We've been in Alaska for 22 years, but it's still there.
It is. It's not Jersey, but it's close.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's awesome. So you run a business here.
Yes.
We're obviously bringing you on to talk about some moose.
Oh,
You got
yeah,
some
moose.
great moose
Yes.
stories, great bear stories. You get in on any caribou?
Yes.
You do? Yeah.
Yeah, that whole herd you were talking about earlier.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, we do care. I've done caribou on and off. Killed a bunch of caribou.
Nice. Yeah, that's definitely one of our favorites to chase.
Yeah,
So-
it's a lot of fun.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So, what was your first hunt and kind of your introduction to hunting in Alaska?
I was in Alaska I had gone moose hunting and tried it hit and miss for first. I think that was my first hunt in Alaska. And then, I'm from Western New York, grew up whitetail. Everything was whitetail.
Yep.
That's all you had, whitetail.
Yeah.
You had to be a whitetail hunter. So everybody told me about these blacktails. So
Yeah.
I said, white, black, hey, I'm in.
Right.
It's a little different bird.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, they're a little smaller.
A little smaller.
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
Tastes better.
Oh,
Tastes a lot
yeah.
better.
Oh, yeah.
Tastes
Definitely
a lot
taste.
better.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Some of my favorites.
Yeah.
Definitely a little different terrain, too.
Oh, yes.
Mhm.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, I've heard the only deer that tastes better than blacktail is axis deer, but I haven't had the chance to try it yet.
Yeah.
So
I haven't tried axis yet. We need to go somewhere where we can
Yep.
shoot some axis
Oh,
bucks with our archery gear.
I got plans. We'll talk.
yeah.
We'll talk.
Okay. Well, it's not like we work together or anything. So,
Right.
Jeff, your
Yes.
first hunt was a blacktail hunt.
The first hunt I did when I was first in Alaska, I went, took a week off and went moose hunting.
Okay.
Yeah.
Did you shoot one?
No.
Struck out.
didn't even see one. Couldn't
So-
tell you what a moose
so
I think
looked
that's
like.
most people's story.
Yeah. There is no moose here. Just Sasquatch. So
Don't get me going.
So how many years did you attempt to hunt before you harvested your first big game animal? And what was your first big game kill in Alaska?
I didn't push much big game hunting after that first episode
Kind of
of
wore you
trying
out.
to go. Well,
Mhm.
I had other interests at the time. Of
Yeah.
course, I was doing other things,
Yeah.
but then I had the opportunity to go out moose hunting. People that knew it best. I mean,
Yeah.
I went with some natives that took me out, and
Yeah.
they pretty much, there's the moose, shoot.
Mm-hmm.
So I shot a spike and it's like, woohoo, big hunter.
Hey, they're tasty though.
Oh, yeah, that was a good one. That helped us out that winter.
Mm-hmm, definitely. So did you dive into hunting pretty much as soon as you got up here, or did it take you a couple years to kind of acclimate?
I tried, but I really wanted to get a feel for. It's one of those things. You're a whitetail hunter.
Mm-hmm.
You come up here and it's a whole different world. You're right into the monster animals, and it's like, how do you do this? And it's serious. I mean, you actually, what do I need? Of course, everybody has a 30-06 back east there, and brought my 30-06. Ta-da!
Yep.
Oh man! Then I was hanging out in Kodiak Island, like, this is not big enough.
You put both feet in some of those tracks. You're like,
Yeah.
I saw one of those. Yeah, I saw one of those tracks. I'm like, yeah, we might have to go home.
Were you successful on that first Kodiak hunt?
Yes, we went to Kodiak with a friend of mine, and we were looking at. He had a piece of property down there, and we're looking at putting up a cabin.
Yeah,
and it's so we have a photo, and we fly in there, and we jump in. There was an outfitter there, had a boat, and he agreed to take us out there, and we had the general area where we were going, and we had a photo. So we're looking for a shoreline. We're cruising along. And it's getting dark out.
No
and
kidding.
And I was like, oh, there it is. And we jump out, and of course, somebody who hunts blacktail on Kodiak told me, they said, as long as you're in your tent at night, the bears own the night. So just stay in your tent and you're fine.
Yeah.
He says that it'll all be good.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Somewhere's around 2:00 in the morning, and my buddy's snoring away, and I'm laying there with my face up against the side of this tent. And I said, wow, this nylon must be super. Protect me from any Kodiak brown bear. this little thin nylon. Wow, the bear, he must really be intimidated by this nylon. Right? I said, how stupid are you to listen to this?
You need to get that Kevlar tent. That's
Exactly.
You're putting up barbed wire fence the next day and digging a trench.
We didn't have a bar. Normally we set up an electric fence.
Yeah.
But we didn't have it. It was the first time there.
Yeah.
Right.
We're in there, and we were there for about 3 days, and that was enough. Let's go home.
No cabin. Yeah, just go home.
Yeah, we'll say, we really need a cabin.
Yeah, right.
we really do.
Yeah.
And the next time we went down, it was build a cabin.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
You went, didn't you, Mark?
No, I didn't. I wasn't
Your
there.
dad was there.
He was there.
Oh. Your dad. Here, can I tell you a story on that one?
Sure.
So here we are. And Kodiak, the bears coming by bothering you, so it's rainy, miserable. The barge just landed with all of our building materials. We got them all off and everything, and it's all rainy and miserable. And I had this Arctic oven tent.
Yeah.
Oh, beautiful tent.
Great.
Oh, yeah.
Beautiful. Had a little wood stove in it and everything. Oh, that tent when I was goat hunting saved my life.
Yeah.
I mean, it was unbelievable. But here's the tent. There was probably 5, 6 guys around there, food all over the place. We're in Kodiak. I'm walking by my tent, and your dad is in my tent with a couple other guys. And they got the wood stove just cranking. And they got the Jiffy Pop on top. And they're cooking Jiffy Pop in my tent. I'm like, what are you guys doing? And your dad looks at me and he goes, oh, well, it ain't my tent.
Yes. Yes. He's like, congratulations, you're the alarm system.
Yeah, exactly.
That sounds like him.
That's awesome.
And then they're messing around, and all of a sudden popcorn's falling all over the place. They're trying to peel the top of it open. I'm like, thanks, guys.
Yeah.
Well, I have a lot more questions about the Kodiak trips, but we're going to leave those for towards the end of the show. There's a lot more Kodiak stories that we'll come back to later. So hang tight.
Sure.
So, question.
Go for it.
I got some family in New Jersey, so I know a little bit
Which
about
exit?
Huh?
Which exit? I'm sorry.
They're around the Wildwood area.
48.
Yeah.
48,
And so I know they have black bears there. I'm not super familiar with New York. Did you grow up around black bears much?
It was interesting because in Western New York, I mean, everything was acid rain back then. And that was the big push. And you didn't see turkeys. You didn't see deer. It was hard to see the deer. And we were in the rural part, Western New York, and that's what made deer hunting so challenging and made it so interesting. And I fell into it with a lot of guys that were big time deer hunters, and I mean we were hardcore when it came to deer hunting.
Yeah,
and we lived it, we breathed it. And that was our whole world, was whitetails and trying to find it. But there was never, I mean, you heard stories of people that seen black bear, but you never did.
Okay.
I mean, we traveled miles and miles, and it was tough. But before I moved out of there to move up to here, the turkey were coming in.
Okay.
Industry had shut down pretty much. And so you start hearing more about black bears moving in.
Interesting.
I mean, we went black bear hunting. It was always go up into Ontario and stuff, go further north in Ontario.
Right.
And they were big in baiting when they used to let you do it there.
Yeah. Interesting.
Yeah.
No.
Yeah. They get some big black bears in the eastern side of the states, all those orchards and farming country and, even down into North Carolina. I mean, you're talking about 500-pound black bears.
There's some monsters down there.
All
compared to the interior bears we have here.
Yeah.
Right.
By far.
Well, isn't Record out of Pennsylvania?
I'm pretty sure you're right.
Yeah.
A black bear.
Big black bear.
Yeah. Mariah could fact check that for us if we
I
really
guess I
wanted
could.
to. Oh boy!
Yeah.
So we already talked about your first hunt. That was your first moose. Right. So we already kind of covered that. What would you say that after 22, 23 years has become your favorite hunt in Alaska?
The moose hunting would be probably the favorite.
Yeah.
I've done the rest. I've done the goats. I've done the caribou. I mean, they're all different in their own sense.
Yeah.
It's what you get excited for, what you get geared for.
Yeah.
I got to agree with you there.
It's tough to say, hey, I just do this.
Right.
And that's what I've learned, that you can't really say that in Alaska. It's just, what are you into now? I mean, we used to go wolf hunting.
Yeah.
Hard and heavy. And that was always fun for when we were doing it. And
it's a nice way to pass time in December, January.
Exactly.
Oh, yeah, definitely.
And it's
good for the moose too.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah. Even if you don't kill them, if you just run them out of there, just keep them out.
Yeah. I do got to agree with you, because I mean, moose are just such cool animals. I mean, when you just look at the sheer size of them, I mean, half the time you look at what they're running through and what they got on their head, and you're like,
I think they're definitely one of the goofiest animals I ever seen.
Really?
I mean, they are so disproportionate, man.
Oh no,
I mean,
man, they're awesome.
I don't know. I mean, to me, compared to something like even a big brown bear, he just looks right, like he looks balanced. A Dall sheep, and he looks balanced. A moose is like a beef cow on stilts.
I've never thought that.
It's just so tall,
Yeah.
I've just always felt like they were disproportionate and kind of gangly looking.
I think they look awesome, man. Especially when you look at the big ones.
Okay.
And they're just
not to say that I don't think they're really, really neat,
Yeah.
but I just think that of all the animals we have to choose from, like what is even that? Like that is the most unique body and rack. And
I feel
face.
that way. I feel that way about caribou.
Really?
Now, don't get me wrong. I think caribou are gorgeous animals. They really are. They're super cool looking deer. They're one of my favorite deer species by far.
Right.
But when you look at those big bulls and you look at the size of their rack compared to the size of their chest, it just doesn't make sense how they don't tip forward.
Yeah.
All right.
I don't know.
It's not nearly as dense.
So the biggest black bear. So in the U.S., the U.S. record black bear is New Jersey, 700 pounds.
Yeah.
Okay. Wow. Now the largest, I believe, in the world was in Canada, and it makes that one look like an average size, 1,100 pounds.
Black bear
in New Brunswick. Yeah.
Wow.
My goodness.
1972.
Whoa.
7.9 feet.
That's a big old boy.
That is a big boy.
Wow.
I seen over 7-footer down in out of Homer. There was a Homer they were advertising because it had to be over in Katmai.
Okay,
somewhere's in there, and that I looked at it and I said grizzly, and they go no because it was in the water wallowing around with fish, just gorged itself with fish and stuff. I mean, it was huge. It was beautiful. And there was no black bear. And I'm like, double taking. I said, yeah, you're right. I'm like, wow. But it was,
they get big down on the coast.
Yeah.
Yeah. But even on coastal Alaska, even if they get 7 to 7.5 foot, and there are, the occasional blue moon black bear that'll get up close to 8 foot squared. Even those bears aren't 600-700 pounds. They aren't even close to that.
They're just long.
The huge ones are going to be 350, maybe 400-ish. Yep. And that's a big one, right?
Right. Yeah.
Even for a 7.5 foot black bear, that's a heavy bear.
Yeah.
Most of them are going to be 325 or less, even over 7 foot.
But yeah. And I mean, you got to think about, a bear down in those neck of the woods, New Jersey and whatnot. I mean, it doesn't have to hibernate very long. Right. So, I mean, it's just eating.
Climate's easier.
Right. Yeah.
Don't have to worry about grizzly bears half the time.
Right.
In part of the country down there.
Sure. No kidding.
For sure.
So you said your first moose hunt wasn't a success. How long did it take for you to get your first moose? How long did you stick it out and push through and persevere?
I never hardcore hunted for moose. It was always something else because moose is always challenging. You have to have so much gear and infrastructure help, and I probably when we first started out, I got that spike relatively easy.
Okay, and
then not really going after it after that. Probably when I first started, when we first went and started utilizing the equipment, I got together with my son and he decided, hey, let's go moose hunting. We're going to do it. We're going to do it like this. And this is what we need to do. Yeah. How do we do this? And I think our first year was unsuccessful. But then after that, our success rate has been 100%.
Yeah.
Probably in the past 5 years.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Awesome.
So prior to that 5-year stretch, you just had different interests, different animals,
Pretty much. Yeah. I didn't hardcore hunt it. Like, I wasn't saying, hey, I'm a moose hunter.
Right.
I remember when I used to work for you and I remember you coming back from a moose hunt one time and looking at me and saying, yeah, went moose hunting. Didn't see nothing. Ain't that the way it always goes?
That was a while ago.
That's usually because a few years ago. Just spent so much money and you're like, that's the way it always goes.
Yeah, exactly.
Because I started looking at this as just like deer hunting. When I was growing up deer hunting, I mean, we put a lot of effort and a lot of our time into it. And, it was a lot less expensive. It's like, if I'm going to get skunked like this all the time, I'm not doing this. Right. We better get serious about this.
Yeah.
So on that note of different interests and different pursuits you were going after, what all did you use to fill the time there? What were you chasing? Was it sheep, goats, caribou mostly, or
a lot of it was you would put in for which tag you would pull and say, hey, let's do it. I mean, of course, Kodiak was in the early days when we set up, we had that cabin. Yeah. And we would go goat hunting on Kodiak. Then it was always, if you pull a bear tag, you can go bear hunting. But cabins in one area, you're always applying for that area. You never seem to get it.
Right.
And you get a goat tags that are over the counter, so you can go up top of the mountains for goats. So that doesn't do good for a cabin down on the water. And and so it would be goats was one when I was younger. I wanted to do the goats.
Yeah,
I wanted to go sheep, but I've never gone sheep hunting.
Okay,
but I did the goats, and then I did the Kodiak brown bear and played around with that. And once that was done, it was like, okay, let's just do the blacktail. And then I pretty much got out of Kodiak. Right, and we sold everything off and concentrating on, and then what's left, what do you want to do now that you killed the goat, you went climbing over the mountains, you killed the blacktail, and then it's like, oh, there's caribou. Okay, so you go up and do a caribou. Of course, the caribou was like one day.
Right.
Drive up the road.
Yeah.
Oh, look, there's a herd.
Can be. Yeah.
Yeah.
And so
I like those days.
it's like you did the caribou, and
Yeah.
now what? You know,
Yeah. Back in the day, I used to leave Fairbanks at 5 a.m. and be heading back by noon.
I've done that in more recent years, but not in the last few.
My-
Been
Yeah, it
too
hasn't been the
tied
last
up.
few.
Yeah,
And my
too busy.
my first 40-mile hunt went like that. In fact,
Mhm.
the guy I went with called me the night before, said, "Hey, you want to go caribou hunting tomorrow?" I was like, "Sure." He
Mhm.
picked me up at like 5 or 6 the next morning. We went up and we were back in town by 2 p.m.
Yep.
Both killed one.
Yep.
we
Yeah.
did it. We left at like 9 or 10 o'clock. You drive up there. It's like you break the wheelers out. There's 9 gazillion people everywhere. Yeah. It's like
The
there's
whole
one
state's
herd,
on
it's
one
like,
road.
oh, there's another herd. Oh, there's another herd. They're passing through. Which one do you want?
Yeah.
And so we had all our caribou down and we finished that. It was a piece of cake. So then I went back up there for the winter hunt.
Yeah.
And you go back up, of course, then I took the snow machines up there. And we took that and we go all the way back in there. And we're looking at it. It's all the fog settled in, so you couldn't see anything.
Right.
Mhm.
We spotted one herd as the fog lifted. And it's like, distance is always a biggie, especially when you forgot the rangefinder.
Yeah.
It's like, so what guns do we have? 223 did not reach them.
223.
It's like, then we pulled out the 308 and that wouldn't do it. And then we had a 257 and it's like, oh wow, look,
257 Weatherby or Roberts?
it was Roberts.
Oh, well, that's your problem.
I don't know. It's the only one that touched them. And next thing it's like, you picked it up about a mile up its back and it's like the last one in the line of the herd. It felt, hey, look, we got it. You take the snow machine over there and it's like, wow, this is a long ways.
Yeah. Yeah. I remember
yeah.
one of my first ventures up there. Man, I did not realize how hard it was going to be to tell distance. It was
that's
insane.
always the monster.
Yeah.
Yep,
I mean,
that's
I was
the
looking at
monster.
bushes thinking, oh man, that's 400 yards, got to be
850 yards later.
Yeah.
like twice as far as you think it's going to be.
It is.
And we've
Yeah.
talked about that on the show before. There's no point of reference up there.
Yeah.
Like it's all wide open, and man, it's
That's the same thing up north. You hit that tundra. It's like,
Mhm.
Oh, yeah.
well, it's right there.
You can't tell the difference between
Yeah.
40 and 100.
It's the only dot moving around.
right.
Mhm. Yeah.
Things look a lot.
That's a mile and a half away.
Yeah. So let's jump into our next point.
Which one?
Well, this is kind of our big ticket item here.
Yeah.
Right? Okay.
The 800-pound gorilla in the room. Go ahead.
Number 11 SCI and number 6
Boone Crocket.
Boone and Crocket.
Mm.
All-time Alaska Yukon bull moose
Yes,
belongs to you.
correct.
Yeah.
So, trophy hunting aside, I mean, this is like a whole nother level of
Yeah.
trophy hunting. Okay.
A long way from that first spike.
Right.
It's
So,
a long
you've
way.
graduated quite nicely out of your class of your first spike bull and kind of, running the whole gambit of what Alaska has to offer. You did the mountain goat hunting, you've done black-tailed deer hunting, you did the caribou hunting, and then you felt like you wanted to revisit moose hunting
Mm-hmm.
later on in your time here for what the last 5 to 6 years is
Right.
what you said.
Yeah.
Correct.
And this is with your son.
Correct.
So let's just walk through in this particular year, and that this was a couple of years ago that this event went down, right?
Yes.
Walk us through access. We're not going to spot burn. That's obviously we've talked about that a lot in the show before.
Mhm.
We're not going to give any specific even regions of the state,
Yep.
but just for the sake of folks wondering, do you have a Super Cub? Do you have a boat? Do you walk? Do you take a paddleboard? And we can just kind of walk through accessing this type of moose country and what we look for and things like that. So,
Well, I have to give my son the credit.
okay.
Mhm.
I mean, he's the one who came up with the locations and how it's like there is a lot of moose in this area, and he's the one that did the research as far as it's the least accessible.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
What would be least accessible to a lot of people.
Right.
Mhm.
Because I think you can't go in there without laying a foundation. You can't go into this top, me explaining all this without laying the foundation of, there's a lot of people come up to Alaska and like to do hunting, and that's a goal. And that was mine.
Mm-hmm.
And the reality of Alaska is always, if it's on the road, there's a lot of people.
Right.
Right.
And you can kill some really substantial, significant game
Mm-hmm.
on the road, off
Mhm.
the road system.
Yeah.
But as soon as you go off the road system, for any amount, if you want to get off the road system, whether it's by wheeler, by plane, by boat, it's just money.
Mhm.
It just takes money.
Yeah.
And it takes a lot. And you can throw a lot of money at it, but one of the things that I found is you really needed support to go along with it.
Mm-hmm.
Because you get out there with a boat and you break down, you're there.
Yeah, right.
Ta-da.
Yeah.
Unless
Quite
you
literally
know-
up a creek without a paddle.
Correct.
Right.
Unless you had somebody to help,
Mhm.
be
Yeah.
able to come in. That's what a lot of your guides do. They have
Right.
the backup. They have
Mm-hmm.
the means.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
all that infrastructure built around. If they have a problem,
Right.
they've got a super cub that can come in and drop boat parts and things like that.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, and it's the financial resources,
Right.
hopefully,
Yeah.
to back that up.
Right.
Yeah.
Because it is expensive.
It is.
And
Yeah.
it is. But when he picked the area, I was actually, so if it's on the road system, it's going to be hunters. So we want to go, we were going off the water.
Mm-hmm.
We don't have the planes. I've done all the planes,
Yeah.
and it's like this area, we have to get there by boat. And the boat we need, it has to be able to take us from A to Z and back again
Mhm.
and successful. So you need a substantial boat to travel as
Mhm.
many miles as as we go.
Yeah.
And then the other secret is once you get there, you have to be able to take. We use smaller boats to get in where we can't get to. Or you just have to go shallow,
Right.
Yeah.
and you just have to have the means of going back in.
Mhm.
And so the boat that we found was, so it's like, well, hey, we got to do multiple boats, and we were able to custom built something for what we needed.
Okay. Nice.
Yeah.
Nice.
Yeah,
Very nice.
Which brand did you go with?
we have an all weld
An all weld.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. That's a very popular brand.
riverboat.
Yep.
Yeah,
Mhm.
yeah. All welds are pretty popular,
Very nice.
Yep.
but you want to be able to travel and
Yeah.
then the smaller boats to get back in, because you want to go where nobody's there.
Mm.
Yeah.
So you have
Yeah.
the substantial native community. They're gonna
Yeah.
travel, and you want to be able to go back in where they don't go.
Right. Yeah.
Because you want
Well-
to get away from everything.
Well, and that's one thing a lot of people might not realize when they're looking at maps of Alaska is there are communities out there, and that's a lot of the areas I work in. That's a lot of the areas Mo's been to, quite a few of them.
Yeah.
And they have their kind of localized areas that they hunt and stuff like that. And so when you're looking at trying to get out in the boonies, you kind of want to make sure you're not sitting right on top of them either.
Right.
You don't want
Right.
to be don't want to be, because then you'll go a very long distance and still have competition.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
but-
Yeah, but there's also, there's means of getting out to a lot of these areas. There's a lot of
Mhm.
outfitters, and that, I guess that's one thing that should be said or could be said, is that there is means for somebody to come up and go out with a outfitter, not
Mhm.
necessarily a guide,
Right.
but an outfitter to get you out there
Mhm.
Yeah.
and help you out, and that's a viable way.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Expensive, but it's extremely
Absolutely.
it is
Yeah.
viable. And
Yeah.
there's nothing wrong with that.
Right.
Absolutely.
Right.
Yeah. No, there's a lot of great companies that provide access and stuff like that for
Yeah.
people that might not be from here or have their own boat or anything.
Right.
Right. What's your how shallow can you go with that all weld? Is that like a 5-inch boat, or like, I guess it depends on the size and weight, but
Depends on how fast you're going. Too.
Yeah.
Our
Speed,
smallest
yeah.
boat, we have a 24-foot
Mhm.
all weld,
Yeah.
extra wide,
Okay.
and custom cab, and has a perch on the top of it,
Mhm.
crow's nest.
Yep.
That we use for when we're going up the sloughs and stuff
Mhm.
to be able, because those moose will lay on the tops of those banks, and
Yeah.
you're going along. So, hey, there's and it's gone.
Yeah. Right. Yeah.
And so
Yeah.
then along with that, we have a 14-foot all weld
Mhm.
ultralight.
Okay.
Uh,
but-
those are nice.
with a 25 horse jet,
Mm-hmm.
and it's tunneled, and it's about an inch. If we're up on step, 1 inch, inch and a half.
Really?
Yeah. With 2 people in the boat.
That's amazing.
If you're not on step, I mean, we've welded
Oh,
it back.
yeah.
It's been welded back together. We've torn the bottom out of her.
You know, boat technology like that just astounds me. Like,
Yeah.
that's just so cool. to
Yeah.
be like-
Yeah. But like you mentioned, it's not without trial and error.
Mhm.
You've had your incidents and kind of working out the kinks with.
Oh no, we're professionals.
Yeah, well,
Right.
that goes without saying. But
Stuck
You know,
on a
that-
sandbar.
just so folks understand, stuck on a sandbar, things like that. Yes, you have this great trophy that we're going to lead into talking about here, but just so folks have an idea, that there's a whole infrastructure built into a moose hunt like this, and to get this far away from folks and to get away from where anybody else is going to fly or boat into or walk into, heaven forbid, it's humanly impossible in some of these areas, and most of them you can't even get there by foot, right? So that these are extreme remote areas of Alaska.
They're extremely remote areas in Alaska. But one side of me, it's easy to talk about this because it's easy for me to talk and get in depth about it because I already have the trophy,
Right.
you know, and that's the one thing I there's a lot of people. I had dreams
Mhm.
of Alaska. I read books on Alaska before I ever came to Alaska,
Yeah.
and you just get jazzed with all the hunting stories and stuff. I mean, I read everything I could get my hands on
Yeah.
about Alaska, and
Yeah.
there's people that do that, and it's doable. It
Mhm.
is doable, and
Yeah.
we make it sound. Is it challenging? Absolutely,
Yeah.
but it's doable to come up
Mhm.
here and do it. I mean, the area we hunt, the areas that we go to are remote.
Mhm.
And sure, we shoot for remoteness, but we've come to realize that, genetics play a major role in this. And
Absolutely.
how much food do they have?
Mhm.
What are they eating? It's cyclical. What year are
Mhm.
you on? Where and you can get a feel for that.
Yeah.
And you can pick a time and actually get a window. Could somebody have gotten the same size animal that I got with spending a far lot, less money? Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. It's a doable task.
Yeah.
But sitting here saying, hey, I want to go to this area, you're going to spend some coin.
Yeah.
We've spent a lot of money to do that.
Yeah.
Mhm.
So-
Yeah. Well, and that's something that I love about Alaska is that it is accessible for
Mhm.
anybody that has the drive to go chase it as
You
far
know,
as they have
that's
to.
a good word, drive, because that's
Yeah.
what it is. Everybody says, well, I don't have enough money for it.
Yeah.
You don't necessarily, yes, you're going to need money, but if you have drive to go to Alaska, you
Mhm.
can do it and fit within a budget
Right.
and have fun and have if you do your research, you
Mhm.
can get into the area that give you the best opportunity
right.
to
Yep,
do to
absolutely.
achieve
So then let's just dive right into this particular year at 2021. Let's just start from kind of the beginning. So you're in the water with the boats in transit to your area. Did you have any major hiccups? Did you spend the night in a sandbar somewhere? Did you get stuck? Any motor issues to kind of kick this one off?
Okay.
Before we actually get into the hunt story.
Yeah.
There again, I think it goes back to there was years of experience that went into this.
Mhm.
I knew the area. My son knew the area. He had been down there. He loved to go in areas where try to go gold mining and stuff. And he would run. He had jet boats, and he would run jet boats in these areas. And he has spent nights on sandbars and stuff. It just has. But one thing he did have is he had a detailed map of the river.
Mhm.
So
Yeah.
you have all the right equipment, you map the river. So he had the lines of
Nice.
where to and where not to go.
Yeah.
And granted, the sandbars move every year
Yep.
a little bit, but you can stay in the general area
Mhm.
depending on how much
Mhm.
water you have.
Yeah.
And he had that experience. He can read the river. Oh my
Mhm.
word, he can read that thing better than I can.
Yeah.
And go ahead.
Real quick on that. Why don't you explain for the listeners what reading the river is? That's a term that a lot of people use up here. It's
Yeah.
a really, really common term. It's a very important one.
if you're going to be back in these rivers.
You're cruising along, trimmed out, nice, and everything's just flowing nice. You're pulling about 3 inches of water, and you're just cruising right along. As soon as you see a ripple in the water, don't go there.
Yep.
Why is that, Jeff?
There's a lot of sand.
Yeah.
That last one I hit, they said sandbar. I don't think there was much sand on that one. That was the gravel.
Just gravel.
Took that lower unit right off.
Yeah.
Oh, boy.
Oh, no.
Man. Wow.
Yeah.
Yep. So you're watching the ripples as you're going. You're watching for the patterns.
You can watch
and
how it flows. I mean, there's
and you want
it's
to stay
all dark brown water and it's all
Right.
moving fast.
But it's that little
You get
jumpy
that little
ripples.
jumping ripples in
Yeah.
there. And you can read it off the end of like the different islands.
Mhm.
And you don't travel. I mean, you grab the center line of everything.
Yep.
And 9 out of 10 times that's not bad.
Mhm.
Until you start seeing it's like, hey, look at that log. Is it floating? No, it's not floating. Don't go and investigate.
Oh, boy.
So we have lines and we follow those lines
Yeah.
on the equipment.
Yeah.
If I'm ever driving the boat, kids looking at me like, you watching it? Like, oh, yeah. Don't get bored.
Yeah. Right.
So you get into your hunting area, and is this, without being too specific, is this early or late season?
I like to go late season because you can manipulate the animals.
Yeah.
Mhm.
You have the ability because
Yeah.
if you catch it right, you're catching the beginning of the rut.
Yeah.
Right.
And it's one thing about those moose. They have no mind when it comes to rut. I mean, they only have one thing on their mind.
Right.
And it's like, so you can get away with a lot. So you're going after animals that don't see people.
Yeah.
Mhm.
And they have one thing on their mind. They see you. You don't necessarily fit their description.
Right.
What they're looking for.
At least you hope not.
Right? And you can get away with a lot more. Albeit, though, there's a lot of stories with that. It's like, no, stop grunting.
Okay, so before we get any farther with this particular hunt story, we've gotten a listener question repeatedly asking about moose hunting. People that are coming up on a moose hunt or are interested in coming up on a moose hunt. And they have heard one way or another about should you have a campfire or a wood stove burning in your moose camp. Now, I already have my personal bias.
We talked about that.
And
Was that 2 episodes ago?
yeah.
Yeah.
We kind of hashed this out amongst ourselves and gave our personal opinions based off of what we have had happen on our moose hunts over the years and what our mentors have taught us through the years. With you, would you have a campfire during a moose hunt or burn in a wood stove actively during a hunt?
No.
Okay. Do you want to elaborate on that?
Sure. I didn't give it much thought.
Okay.
But they got some big ears on them.
Mm-hmm.
And you go into an area, it's like we're gonna hunt this area.
Yeah.
And we will sometimes I like to get right up in the area just because it's convenient.
Yeah.
Where my boy's like, no, let's stay out and find an island and go set up camp there and get away. Because then you could set up at that fire or that,
Right.
just get away. But if you're going to live in where you're going to hunt, no banging, no clanging, no noise.
Yeah.
I mean, just stay quiet.
Run silent, run deep.
Because what happens is as soon as they smell, hear anything, they don't spook. They just move on.
Right.
And you're just banging your head against the wall.
Mm-hmm.
And I think we found that leading up to the we went down in this area and we were unsuccessful our first year. All that ways, all that money, unsuccessful. Second year I said, well, why don't we go to this area and why don't we try this? And my son came up with different aspects and we should do. And when we dialed into where we were going, I think we've pulled 7 moose, 8 moose in 4 years.
Nice.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's good success.
So pretty much
5 years.
100%.
Yeah.
Yeah, definitely 100%.
Yep.
Nothing.
Wow.
Everything over 50 some inches.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think my first one was 52. Then the next one was 55. and we walked up from there.
Well, we'll get to that in a second because at some point there was a huge jump in there to what this to what this monster was.
Well, and I like the breakdown you did there because I think that answers the question a little bit better because we all, just in case you didn't hear that episode, if you weren't listening for whatever reason, I don't know why you wouldn't be, but we all basically said we don't have a problem with burning campfires when we're on the hunt, but part of that difference.
How big's your trophy? I mean, I'm just asking.
There it is.
No, there it is. And that's the good point. That's the good point. But whenever possible, outside of, say, a mountain hunt where you're on foot or something like that, if I have the ability, I do try to camp and set up away from the hunting area.
Well, what type of hunting? What are you talking about?
But and that's what I mean. So if they're on wheelers or boats and they're camping away, I think the question we got from that listener, he was talking about going in on a float hunt. So that would be a very good answer for him if he's going to be camping in that area that he's hunting.
On a rafting float hunt, if you're hunting where you're stopping to camp, which is often the case, 90+% of the time, if you're stopping somewhere to camp, that's where you're hunting on a float hunt.
Right.
In that event, I wouldn't have a fire.
Yeah.
Yes. And that's something that we should have clarified in a bit more detail about certain case situations.
I didn't quite make that click when I think
what they were most concerned about, their question was about smell. They were worried about the scent.
I don't, you see, I set up a wood stove where we are at. And it's hard to find dry wood. It is. I mean, in Alaska, it's tough. I mean, you have to find it dry standing.
Yeah.
I mean, if it already just knocked itself down, it's rotten, and it's just difficult. And I found we were spending so much time trying to get wood instead of hunting.
Yeah.
And it's like we actually will get oil drips.
Yeah.
Or buddy heaters or something. Anything to make the heat. The heat's always it turns out to be a secondary thing.
Yeah.
I think the first thing that we answered about that campfire and moose camp question in that episode was it's more about noise than it is about the smell.
Yeah.
Right. I'll give you that.
If you are camped a little ways away from where you're going to be hunting, say it's a quarter mile or a half mile or even more, it's more about the noise.
Yeah.
That's
don't start that chainsaw.
Yeah.
Don't
start the chainsaw. Don't have a campfire atmosphere. And this is what Mariah said, but some guys, their vision of a campfire is, talking loud and carrying on at night because it's dark. They're not hunting. They can't do anything. They're, maybe they're a half mile away from the moose hunting area, but people don't realize how far that travels.
Are you ready?
Go for it.
So we have shot some moose. Of course, those numbers I gave you are within a 4 mile square radius. And
wow.
That's a big wow. And so we're sitting at camp. It's midday, and a couple guys are sleeping, and my buddy and I are sitting there, and it's tall grass, and it's a big slough that we're on. The boat's parked there, and the wood stove's going, and we're staying warm, and the sun happened to crack out, and we're sitting back. It's probably 1:30 in the afternoon or so, and of course we like to do the morning in the evening, definitely evening.
Yeah.
And so it's like 1:30 and everybody's taking a nap, you know?
Yeah.
Getting ready for that last push. And we're both sitting there, and all of a sudden you hear this. And we look at each other, what is that? And you say, you hear the water. Of course, the wood stove's going, we're talking, and just going, and there was, the moose walked 60, 80 feet from us.
Wow.
Walk right. We never saw it because it was in willows and tall. The grass had to have been 4 foot, if not a little higher.
Yeah.
And so we go walking out to the boat, which was probably 20 feet till we get down to we could step out to the boat to the bank, and it's all mud and slime. And we look, and here's this 50-inch bull right in the middle of the water. He's walking across the water. And it's like, so all that noise that we were making talking, that wood stove going, and he's like, okay, I'm going over here. And it's like, oh, look, there's a moose.
Right.
Wow.
So I think the point I'm hearing is it's subjective.
Yeah.
It depends on the moose is what I'm hearing.
That's the wind blowing the right direction.
Yeah.
That's, what circumstances drove that? I don't know.
Mhm.
What I'll tell you the one thing that was difficult for me to overcome in Alaska was whitetail hunting. You grow up whitetail hunting, you even think about looking the wrong direction and they're gone.
Right.
And it's so everything's super skittish. It's not like that up here. You have to manipulate it in a different way.
Yep.
And so, but I mean, I'm in Kodiak, right? I'm coming down the mountain and I'm walking. I hear this. I mean, it is coming down behind me. I'm like, wow, whitetail. There's a deer. They're coming right down behind me. And then I stop with this thought, like, those deer don't make that kind of noise. That could be a bear.
Right.
I spun around and it was a couple guys hunting the same hill. Like I'm walking through it. I'm like, you dummy, man. But you get stuck with that whitetail mentality and you're trying to hunt that and stuff. But it is a different world up here.
It really is. Yeah. So take it. So you get to your camp area. We'll push this back to 2000. We'll push this back to 21. How'd the hunt play out?
It had its challenges. It was hard when we finally got there and we're all set up. And
what was the weather like that year?
It was cold.
Yeah.
It was just starting to turn cold.
Was that the year it snowed in September here in Fairbanks?
I don't remember that.
Yeah, one of those years it did.
But it was cold morning. The ice was just starting to form on the side of the riverbanks, and it was late season. And yeah, that was. So it was like, okay, the sun was out. It just came out, and let's go up into our hunting area. So we take the smaller boat, and we're heading up into the hunting.
Yeah.
And one thing about moose hunting, it just like deer hunt, it's going to happen quick.
Yeah.
And jump it quick. And so I was in the front of the boat. My boy was in the back of the boat. And as we were cruising up the slough, you see you see small bull cows. We saw some cows.
Okay.
And that was it. We saw the cows, and it's like, oh, we stopped the boat, and it was like, and we're just drifting, and I'm in the front, and I'm watching these cows, and right out of my peripheral, right next to us, probably 40 yards, this thing stood up, and that's all you see. And you know how you're supposed to gauge, is it big enough? It was like, kill that moose. And that moose, I'll tell you what was interesting. Those cows had turned and started walking back into the timberline. And he got up not because the boat was there, not because he heard us, not because of he got up because his harem was leaving.
Right. Yeah.
And that's all he cared. He got up and he was eyeballing his harem and going after his harem.
Yeah.
And of course, then once he catches on that we're there, it's game on. And I pulled the trigger on him, and he reeled over backwards, and it was done.
Wow.
Yeah, it was over. And we didn't think of it, but we go up on the shore, and of course, I mean, from where the moose is to where the water is to the boat, where our pack was probably 25 feet.
Oh. I don't want to hear about it, Jeff.
Lucky.
I don't want to hear about that.
No.
That's too funny.
That's awesome.
So when you get up there, but he was over on his back. So the horns were on the ground. It's like, wow, that's a big rack. That's all we said.
Got a correction to make right here.
Go ahead.
We'll have horns.
You're
Okay,
correcting the
thank
guy
you.
with the number 6 Boone Crocket moose.
So for the record, we have an entire episode titled "Deer Don't Have Horns."
Deer don't have one. Right. So
That's
my
what-
world record compared to yours, my horns, the rack was stuck in the mud.
Yeah.
And so we couldn't, I start picking up one side of it. Of course, we ended up rolling. We'd have to roll the moose.
Mm-hmm.
And we're rolling this thing. And it took both of us. And we're just heaving on this rack. And we finally get it to where the head cocks and it's, the rack's half up in the air, half down the ground. And we're like, wow, that's pretty big. You got a tape measure? No. You got a butcher knife? No. No, everything's back at the boat. It's like, oh no, not the boat 20 feet away. It was the boat, the main boat. And it's like, really? And it's like, okay. And so we took the gun and I laid the gun across it, and it didn't touch either side.
Mm.
And it's like, wow, that's pretty good. And so we went back and we had some guys there, and it's like, hey, we got one. Let's go up there. And I whipped out my tape measure that we had there, and I measured the gun. I says, oh my.
So how long was the gun for reference?
I don't remember. It
Probably-
was a lot shorter. It
probably-
came up
probably-
a lot shorter.
I was going to say.
Probably
yeah,
in the 40
Yeah.
inch
Yeah,
range.
40,
43.
mid-40s.
Yeah.
But yeah.
And so we went back up there,
Yeah.
and then we whipped out the tape measure, and it's like, oh, wow, we got a monster here. And you realize how big, the horn, the rack, thank you. It made the rest of the moose look small, but then we're looking at the moose, and it's like,
Yeah.
wow, this is really a big moose.
Right.
Mhm.
Right.
And it was just
What was that final number?
75 and a quarter.
Buddy.
Wow.
And how many brow tines per side? Do you remember?
It's probably sitting above the mantle at the house.
Had to build
It's
a new
actually
living
down.
room.
Yeah, I'm getting a full mount done on it.
Are you really?
Yeah,
That's
I don't have a
awesome.
house big enough to put it in, but we're putting a full mount done on it.
It'll be sitting in the
Wow.
shop.
It had, I think it's a 4 and 2.
Really?
I guess I should. Yeah, it's actually more even than you think, but I mean they're just massively long brow tines
Wow.
No kidding.
Yeah.
sticking out of the thing.
I'd imagine it's like baseball bats sticking out of the front of his balls.
It's bizarre too because on the back of the rack,
Mm-hmm.
it has 2 horns coming out where it's palmated.
Mm.
Two.
They have like those
coming down.
ripples in the palm.
No, they're smooth, but the horns on the back, it's a little horn. It's probably
Yep.
12, 14 inches long. It just,
Wow.
on both sides, it drops down in the back.
So does that change the score then? Is there a typical versus non-typical moose rack?
It depends how they score them.
Yeah,
SCI scores every inch available,
Mm.
and they'll score that stuff on the back. You know,
Yeah.
'cause it's the horn.
Right. It's
I mean-
part of it. Yeah.
Yeah, that's kind of the knock on number 1 moose
Mm.
in Alaska. I mean, they don't have SCI doesn't have a non-typical
Okay.
category, but you look at the one and it's number 1 in Alaska, and it's got horns on top of horns on top of horns.
Oh,
Right.
yeah.
It's just
Right.
coming out everywhere, or rack on top of rack, whatever you want to say. I mean, but it's just coming out everywhere, and where they discount that at Boone Crocket,
Mm-hmm.
and
Oh.
Yeah.
that's what they'll discount that
Right.
if it's not. They want something that's even, and that's
Yeah.
what works on this one is because it comes out extremely even.
Okay.
It doesn't look like that when you measure
very
it out.
symmetrical
It is
antlers.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Yeah.
So 75 and a quarter.
75 and a quarter.
Wow.
Yeah.
That is a
Man
absolute
alive.
monster.
You could like literally hang a hammock in that one, huh?
It is, yeah, right.
Wow.
Yeah.
That is the bull of 10 lifetimes for most people.
Yeah.
It was, and that was the thing. After I pulled the trigger on it, and we measured it out, we're all standing in a circle, and my boy looks at me and says, "Now what are you going to do?"
Yeah, right. So, what day of the hunt was that? Was that like day after you got there, or was that several days in?
That was probably. I don't think we've ever spent more than 5 to 7 days down there.
Okay. Yeah.
At a time. it takes a while to get there.
Yeah.
When you get set up,
Yeah. Rivers get you a lot of places, but it's not always fast.
Right. Interesting. What did you shoot that bull with?
338
Win mag or ultra mag or
Win mag.
Win mag?
Yeah.
Nice.
250 grain bullets or 225s or
Whatever we found in the boat.
I mean, that close. I mean, yeah.
This is funny because we nerd out so much.
I know. I've heard.
Yeah.
I've heard. It's like when I'm telling you about that bull walking through the camp, right?
Mm-hmm.
And my buddy, I'm like, "There's your moose. Kill that moose." And when he looks around, and goes, "Where's the gun?" Everybody around there, and he happened to find one that was leaning up against something. And he grabs that and he shot it. He spent tons of money, years, had this gun that he's going to kill a moose in Alaska. Had this thing all primed up. He didn't kill it.
No,
he never had that gun. He couldn't find it if life depended on it. There's the moose. Make it happen. There it is. Here, choose this gun.
Wow.
This shoots.
Well, and you know, and the thing is that people done that for forever.
Yeah.
I mean, it's worked, and it has. You know, we talk a lot about accuracy. We're reloaders. We're the guys that are counting half inches at 100 yards, you know, or tighter, and but that's more about passion and the ability to stretch out a little farther sometimes if we have to. But it's really, really interesting to see some of the setups.
You know, the shame is a lot of guys. I shouldn't say a shame. The reality is a lot of guys don't have the time or the means to put it into kind of, you know, for their guns and their bullets and do all that research. There's zero wrong with it. I mean, you can do that. That's a lot of fun. You know, I look at some of those guys doing that varmint hunting.
Yeah,
that's exciting. But I mean, you've got to be geared up, keyed up for that. I mean, but there's also, there's another side to this. When you're shooting a cow out in the middle of the woods, you don't necessarily need
right. Yep. So how big of a jump was that from others you've shot in that area? I know you'd mentioned some 50-inch variants in there you'd shot before. Did you see anything in like the 60-inch area, or was it like all in the 50s and then suddenly there's just this monster there?
We knew the area was good because it was remote and it had limited access because things got shallow real quick. And so that would keep a majority of people out of there.
Right.
But what we found that's even more important is the genetics within an area. And killed moose all around that monster. Are there other monsters? I'm sure. We had killed 50. We were all in between the 50 and 60. We were just under 60.
Yeah.
And it's like, yes, these have the potential.
Yeah.
I mean, you can have a moose, you know, age is the big deal too. I mean, there's a lot of dynamics that fall into play, but we found that in the areas that we've been in the area we're in, there's several genetic factors, you know, taking place.
Right.
And, I mean, one of the things I found interesting was I don't know if it holds true for whitetail, but for the moose, the size of the antlers is determined by the female, not the male. And, you know, I did a lot, you know, and they said anything that is over 70 inches is usually 12 years old.
Wow.
Really?
10 to 12 years old. They said, it's an older one. And that, but you can have a 10 or 12-year-old 45-inch bull
right
down there if the genetics just don't dictate that.
And a lot of times, from my understanding, the regulations put out by Fish and Game are more based around genetics than anything else. Like if it's a 3 brow tine area or 4 brow tine area or any bull, you know, it's usually based around what's the average for the mature bull genetics in that region. Right. So the reason some are 3 is because they just don't have the genetics for 4 brow tines in that area. So.
Well, that's what I say, like doing your research. If you're going to spend the money and you're going to do it, if you actually did the research on the genetic aspect and the feed and had access of being able to find out what the moose population, the densities have been traditionally, you'd see a trend.
Right.
You can see a trend in an area and say, you know, I'd like to, and you find yourself a fitter or guide in that area and go and do it.
Mhm.
You know, the area means more than, hey, this outfitter's cheaper. Well, it's originally cheap because I know too many animals on there.
Right. No, there's a lot of truth to that. Very, very true. Very interesting. So how old do you think the majority of the bulls were that you had been killing in that area? You said it's inside 4 miles.
Did I say that?
Yeah. You did. You did say it. Mariah, rewind the tape.
Right.
You also kept calling them horns, but
Right.
But I just want to call out that I didn't correct you on that. That was Mariah's thing. So
Oh yes,
you can just pin that on him.
Hash that out.
Right. So it's a relatively small area, right? You're
Well,
shooting
there's a lot of moose in a relatively small area.
Right. But do you think that you're shooting these 50s to 60s bulls out of the same genetic group? And did you see kind of a trend of rack genetics and symmetry and similar builds leading up to finding this one? Or was this kind of wow, there was nothing else even built like this one in the area?
It was interesting in how the area itself was. My kid will kill me if I keep giving up all this good stuff.
Don't worry. We lock our door here.
But we were pulling 50 inches, and we've stated the hardest part about our hunt is getting passing up a 50-inch bull.
Yeah.
That's the hardest part.
Mhm.
And I never thought I would ever be in that situation.
Right.
But when you can walk up and you can pass up something with 3 brow tines on both sides,
Yeah.
and it's like there's something bigger. You know, he can do that. I can't.
Right. I can't either.
I can now because it's like, oh, that's it.
Yeah. No, I'm not there yet.
Right.
No. But if it's legal, it's going out in the game bag.
We've worked harder to try to understand the area just because we've exploited it so much.
Yeah.
Mhm.
And we've found that genetically, I think there's probably, it's interesting because you can see from what's existing, they're all palmated, they're all X amount of points
Mhm.
and brow tines X amount until you get up in there and you get some areas in that same general vicinity, the monster seems to be a different bird.
Mm.
And then we were able to tell my son, he won't listen to this one. But we were hunting up there, and it was his turn. He was up there, and we were looking at, and it was late in the hunt, and it's like, look, he's a meat hunter.
Mhm.
Mm.
Me, I don't care.
Yeah.
Him, he shoots it and feeds it to his dog with him and his dog. He needs a woman bad. But
Maybe you can plug his Instagram at the end of the show.
right? Try to help the boy out. He needs help. More grandchildren. Man, this is getting ridiculous. But
Hey, ladies, he's a good moose hunter.
he got fish this year. He just got done fishing. He got more kings and more reds than he can see.
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, I hope we didn't get too many kings, but
Well, in certain parts of the state and
He
certain
got
fisheries, you
he
still
got
can.
every
Yeah.
king that he had a tag. I
nice.
think.
Yeah.
And so
Nice.
dip net and stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's like
Yeah.
what are you doing with all those reds? And it's like dogs got to eat too, you know. And it's like,
Yep.
oh
Yeah.
Yeah.
so we're looking at a moose, and he's looking at a spike, and he's looking at the spike, and he's like, it's meat.
Yeah.
Mhm.
It's like, let's just do this, get out of here, let's go home, you know, because it wears on you hard.
Yeah.
It
Mhm.
wears on you hard. It's like, yeah, that's a long ways to go. Just it's like, oh yeah, but I mean, if you're a meat hunter,
Yeah.
there's meat. And it's standing right next to the bank,
Mm.
and it's only 60 or 80 yards away, and it's like,
I'd pull the trigger.
he goes, should I shoot it? Well, and he takes the oar, and he's into trying to see how calling these moose in. and he takes the oar and he rakes the willows. Of course, thing's watching him rake the willows. And it's like, what possibly can go on here? And the thing's looking at him and looking at him like, what are you? What are you doing? And he's grunting. And then I start grunting. And he's grunting and I start grunting. And the thing looks, and all of a sudden he goes, I'm going to shoot that moose. I go, second. And I grunt again. And he turns and looks back in the woods. As soon as he did that, I go, whoa, hang on. And he takes it, and I said, rake that one more time. He rakes it, and we sit there, and we let out a grunt. And that thing turns and walks back into the timber. And lo and behold, here comes this grunt from about 80 or 100 yards back in. And he starts coming out, and he starts coming. And it's like, oh, my. Yeah. And he's grunting. And it's on the other side of the slough, and the thing it comes out, and all you see is horns. And I looked at that moose, and, it's the same thing. Yeah. You look at enough grizzly bears or brown bears, you can tell the size of a brown bear. Say that's a 7-footer, 7.5, or 8-footer, or the 10-footer. It's like, there's no doubt. And I looked and I said, there was no doubt this is a legal bull, and this is a big bull. And I thought I called it 63, 65 inches. And because it was that symmetrical, that beautiful of a rack. Yeah. And I could tell the whole hunting story here. You really get in trouble. He pulls up his gun and he takes it. I go, kill that moose. And he shoots that moose. And that moose turns and runs back into the woods. Starts back in the woods. I go, really? Of course, he's got his 7x62 or his 300. I forget which one. He goes back. I go, get in the boat, and we go the other side. We climb up on the bank, and we're going back in there. And I go one direction. He goes the other in case the thing was circling around, And so I start going. He pulls the trigger again. He goes, oh, it's right over here. And he had hit it. And I think he hit it, took out the lower part of the lungs or something, shooting the head on. Yeah. And the thing's standing there away from him. And he pulls the trigger again. And then I hear him, he pulls the trigger again. And I see, and I look, I hear this moose crashing through the willows, and it's coming my way. And I pick up my gun, and I see that moose come by, and all I hear is him back in the woods. Hey, you got any more bullets? Come. And I could tell the moose is like, the moose is done. It's dead walking. Yeah. And he runs probably 20 yards in front of me, and he stops, and you see him heaving and heaving and heaving, and finally he falls down, and he's wallowing, he's dying, and I'm like going to put him out of his misery. Yeah. So I'm walking up to him, and I've got the gun, and I'm going to put a bullet in the back of its head and put it out of its misery, and it's just about dying, but it's just thrashing its head. Right. I look out the corner of my eye, and the kid's standing there, and he's got a tape measure in his hand. I'm like, this ain't even dead yet. He goes, I ain't going nowhere.
Boy.
He whips that tape measure out. And finally the thing dies,
Right, yeah.
And he whips that tape measure, and he measures that rack. It was 53 inches.
No, really?
And I'm like, he goes, must be a Chinese tape measure or something. He goes, this thing ain't reading right. There's something wrong. Huh. And I was like, wow, 53. And we looked again, and you're looking again. It just is even genetically, by the time the area that we were in, I mean, that rack looked that big. Yeah. Just because it was palmated out, and it had small brown, and it had long stickers, I should say, on the side of the palmation. Yeah. And it had 4 and 4 on the brow tine.
Wow.
Yeah. And that's why you see that. And they were distinctly, you could see the 4.
Was it real like stickleback brow tines, or what? Did he cup down and have real mass on the brow tines?
That's what happens is it dipped, and it cupped. The whole rack seemed to cup and pull itself back in. Yep. So you lose it. It's like, why couldn't this have been laid out, man? Laid out have been about 105.
Right.
Right. But it was, I mean, it's a beautiful rack. It's a beautiful moose. Yeah. So that was interesting enough.
Yeah, that's awesome. Yeah, very cool. Yeah. So you shot the moose, back to the big boy.
The big boy.
Yeah. And you get this thing back to town. did you decide right away what you wanted to do with it? Because you mentioned it's going to get life sized.
Well, I knew I wanted to. It's like this has to be a trophy of some sort.
Yeah.
Mhm.
You know, and I didn't know the SCI. I didn't know Boone Crocket. I couldn't tell you one from the other at the time. And I found an SCI guy who measures in Fairbanks.
Yeah.
Mhm.
And there's a bunch, and I found another guy who was Boone Crocket.
Okay.
And I went and had the Boone Crocket guy measure it, and it was big, but he couldn't tell me any more than that because he didn't have his books and he was of that stripe, wherewithal or whatever you want to say.
Yeah,
but then I
right.
found this SCI guy, and he measures it up, and he says, "This could be within the top 10."
Mm.
And he didn't have the reference either to look into to see what it was. But we knew the regulation was, he knew he had never measured anything that size, and it was only the second one he ever did.
Mhm.
And so he says, you have to, in order to qualify, if it's in the top 10, you have to go to a master measurer.
Right.
And
Okay.
there's only several, there's a handful, and they're all down in Anchorage.
Yeah.
Okay.
And so I called a bunch of people. I finally got a hold of this one guy who measures all those trophies
Mhm.
and took it down to him. He measured it out, and he's the one who, and he measured for Boone and Crocket too.
Oh, okay.
And so he measured both, and he says, yeah, number 11 and SCI,
Wow.
and he says number 6 Boone and Crocket. And I'm like, wow.
Wow. So
Yeah. I had the pleasure one time of seeing they had a whole group. It was a whole measuring group, and they were down, and this was down in Soldotna,
Right.
at the Sportsman's down there in Soldotna, and I had the pleasure of watching them kind of go through the process of all of that, and it's insane. I mean, it was just a whole room full of absolute monsters.
Yeah.
I mean, it was just amazing to see, what people pull out of the woods and stuff.
Yeah.
It's,
Well, that's just like, in order to hold that position in Boone and Crocket, it has to be measured within 3 years,
okay.
remeasured by
Yeah.
a team within 3 years. So you have, and they'll fly it down to wherever they're doing one of those. If they don't come to
Interesting.
your state, they will.
Really?
What?
I think it's Sportsman's Warehouse or one of those will pay to fly it down.
Do you
wow.
know why
Okay.
that is? Why they have to remeasure it inside of 3 years?
Just to
with the team?
confirm.
Really?
Yeah, and that's what they would do to this in order to hold that 6th position.
Wow.
It has to be measured within 3 years.
Because you have to wait, what is it, 60 or 90 days before you can take the first
It was
measurement?
something like that.
Yeah, it's one of those to dry it out, and then so every 3 years after that. Huh?
Yeah.
Interesting.
Interesting. So when you got back to Fairbanks and you have this thing, I assume it's, I don't know, sitting on a car trailer or something, right? So believe it or not, I saw the person who transported this rack to our local shop where it was cleaned and the skull was cleaned up and detailed. I saw it go down the road as I was at work that day, and I saw it go down the road on a car trailer. And I remember seeing it strapped lengthwise on this, 16 or 20 foot trailer. And I watched this moose rack go by on the trailer, and I recognized the truck. I knew who was driving the truck. I saw the driver, and I immediately called somebody and I said, "Hey, did so-and-so shoot a monster moose this year?" And he goes, "No, but I heard that, I heard that you did, and they were talking about your bull." And sure enough, that was it. So yeah,
Wow.
I remember the day that I heard about it, and then I seen it going down the road. It was unmistakable. I thought, wow, yeah, that's a pretty sizable rack.
I think the best one was you sat in the back of a pickup truck. And it just sticks, and the horns are just sticking up.
Yeah, yeah, that's incredible.
Antlers.
Antlers were just sticking up. And so I pulled up, and there's these guys that had some in their truck, and that was the best. That was classic. I pull right up, pull next to them, and they're all sitting there. They look over and they're like, whoa. And then you see, it was quite a dramatic scene at the traffic light. Like, mine's bigger than yours.
So was it your own idea to to take it and get it scored, or was that somebody else that kind of pushed you in that direction?
I wanted to get it scored.
Yeah.
And to see what in the world I had.
Yeah.
Because we knew it was something, it was unique.
Right.
And so it was like, wow, you just don't come up with a 75-inch
Yeah.
Right. Yeah.
rack.
Yeah.
Right.
And it's like, this has to be something. And it was more curiosity. Where does this fall into the scope of things?
Right.
And a lot of it is, I can't believe somebody, who am I
Mhm.
to
Yeah.
get something like that?
Yeah.
Usually it's always on television or something like that. And those guys are killing them. And, they're spending $1 gazillion. And until I realized I was the guy spending $1 gazillion trying to get this.
Don't even have enough money to buy more ammo for your kid's gun. And,
Right.
yeah.
You get boat gas or ammo. Pick one.
Him and that silly 300 short mag. You can't find 300 short mag to save your life.
Tell me about it.
anymore.
No,
Yeah,
no.
it doesn't exist.
That's Mariah's lot in life right now.
Yeah.
It's you want to know where all the 300 short mag are? It's in the boat.
Yeah. I have a small stash, but that's going to stay where it's at.
Right.
You're welcome.
Yeah.
I have bought some of it myself, but yeah.
Have you really?
Yep.
I
Yeah.
did before it all disappeared
Disappeared.
off the shelves.
Oh, right. Yeah.
In town, I was going to
It's
say.
crazy. You wonder why you can't find that stuff. I don't know if it just fell out of favor.
it's funny
Yeah,
because
it's with the production
Yeah.
the production holdups that went on during
I've
COVID.
heard that 3 years now.
I know.
Yeah.
Well,
Well,
what they've done is they basically started coming back in popularity. So they started at one end and basically worked through the most popular rounds to get back up. And it's just 300 Wisdom just isn't that,
Right now, there's
popular
so
around.
many
So-
other cutting edge cartridges,
Right.
And
If
new
If
stuff.
I hear any more about 6.5 Creedmoor, I'll
Oh my
You and me
die.
both.
He's like, really?
So when I bought that 300 short mag, with a bunch of ammo. Thank you.
Again, you're welcome.
When, part of the reason I was going to buy a 7 rem mag,
Yes.
and then he said, "Hey, why don't you just buy this thing for me? I'm selling it anyway." And it was the same model gun. I said, "Sure, why not?"
Because you couldn't find any ammo for it. So
No.
Well,
No.
I had a ton of ammo.
He had a
and
ton
this
of
is
ammo for it.
pre-COVID.
I know.
And
I'm just joshing.
when he sold it to me,
Don't you ever accuse me of not having enough ammo, James.
Go ahead, Mariah. I'm
That's true.
listening.
when he sold it to me, one of the only rounds, the cartridges you could find on the shelf that was readily available was 300 short mag.
Yeah.
It was readily available.
Yeah.
Multiple different choices.
Yeah.
I had a myriad of choices if I walked into Sportsman's Warehouse.
I think that
And
was
there
for
were
the
s-
first year of COVID. That was the case.
Well, and there were
It
several
seemed to
There
be-
wasn't-
True.
there
That's
wasn't
true.
7 rem mag. There wasn't 300
Right.
You couldn't
Win
find
mag.
7 mag. You couldn't find 22s.
Well, because
Right,
back
exactly.
in, because back in the day, those cartridges that not everybody used,
They
they
were
were
just-
still getting produced at the same rate, roughly, and so
Right.
they would just sit there. And then Sportsman's gets the same order every month, and then
Right.
it just stacks up. And
Ooh.
we saw that with the 10 mil pistol ammo. I mean,
Oh,
good
man.
night. There was
Yeah.
2 pallets of it on the floor at
Yeah.
one point.
There's
Like-
enough 10 millimeter ammo in Sportsman's Warehouse to beat Russia, but we don't have to go into that.
Right.
Oh, Russia's
I
running out of ammo.
the thing here in Alaska, though, I mean, it's not 30-06 country. I'm kind of a big caliber guy myself,
Mhm.
Mhm.
and I'm the largest caliber that you can shoot comfortably.
Yeah.
Mhm.
That's
That's how I roll.
You knowing how, my boy, he's a different stripe.
Mhm.
He thinks, he likes backing me up with a 7x6 too.
Yeah,
And it's really, he says, yeah, it's what you can shoot, and if you're comfortable
Yeah.
shooting, it's hard to argue that, except if you're being backed up.
right.
Yeah, 7x6 too.
Right.
It's like there's backup
Yeah.
for a reason.
Well,
Right.
and it's
500 nitro or something, really? It was good.
Yeah. Yeah.
It seems like there's several different trains of thought because you get the guys like I'm in the same boat as you. I think I'm going to shoot the biggest thing I can shoot comfortably and accurately, and that I can find ammo for, and that's what I like to shoot. Because why not? Right?
Mhm.
I know it's not
Right.
overkill for a moose.
Right. Right.
It's not overkill for a grizzly.
Mhm.
So I'm not too worried about that. But I do want to shoot the biggest thing I can. There's a whole group of people that are kind of the opposite. They want to shoot the smallest one they can.
Right.
And what's the smallest caliber that'll do the job? And I'm going to do, go out and try to kill everything with this small caliber. And to a point, I mean, it will work. You can kill anything in Alaska with a, like you said, a 30-06. I mean, you can do it at controlled ranges, 270s, 6.5 PRCs, things like that. I mean, all of that can kill just about anything, but it's just the what ifs. It's the what if the shot isn't perfect. What if that moose all of a sudden turns a little bit right as you're pulling the trigger, and you can't really predict that. It's nice.
The first moose hunt, or I should say, when we first got into the area, we go up into a big dry lake, and we're going through the grass is probably 5-6 feet. Oh, and it's just, I mean, you're going down in craters and coming back up, and this fat boy got no reason to be there in the first place. When I'm backing him up, and he's 5 foot tall, and just, I mean, he's plowing through that stuff like it's going out of style. And it's like, really? Yeah. And he's just motoring along, and I'm backing him up, and I've got a 45-70. And we're going further into this dry lake. Now, when it comes to packing moose, I like moose hunting right on the water for a reason.
Right. Yeah.
These guys are packing from miles back in and stuff. Yeah, not so much.
Yeah.
And so
they're big critters.
he goes out, he goes, moose. And I stop, and I look up through the grass, and I climb. I have to walk my way up to the kid, and he's standing there, and he's got that 300, and he's got on the side, he got this moose. And then sure enough, this moose was probably 40 yards looking at him right out in the open.
Wow.
And I'm looking at it, and it's a 50-some inch bull. And he goes, should I shoot it? And the question is, should I shoot it? Is it big enough?
Right. Yeah.
That's what he's thinking.
Right.
Me, I'm looking at it, and I'm looking back at how far away the water was. It's like, I'm like, and the decision to shoot it was, okay, I can help. I'll help pack this out of here.
Yeah.
And the moose was just about to make a decision. You can see that look in his eyes. And I says, go ahead, kill that moose. And he shoots it, and it turns, starts walking away. And I'm like, no, that's further away from the boat. I said, that ain't happening. I took that 45-70. We took care of business. It was done. It's like put this thing down. Yeah. We're moving on.
Oh boy. That's too funny. Funny. Well, yeah, I'm sure you can't do that with a 7.62 as effectively.
Yeah.
That's funny.
Well, everybody, a lot of the native community, they'll shoot with a smaller caliber because that's what they have.
Yeah,
right.
Yeah,
Yeah.
223, 243.
They'll shoot them in the hump.
Yep.
Yeah.
And it's like, you and I wouldn't shoot them in the hump because that's a world for us. They kill moose all the time. And they want to shoot in the hump because they're trying to save every bit of meat they can.
Right, yeah.
There's a reason behind all that. They aren't horn hunters and stuff. If they happen to get something over 50 inches, they're like, wow.
Yeah.
Ta-da. Yeah. But they don't care about going after the horns. They just want the meat.
Right.
And
yeah.
of course, they'll use smaller caliber because all of them have their SKSs,
Right. Right.
Yeah.
So it's just, it happens like
and again, if you're close enough and you know you're in your range, then that's perfectly, you can do it with not a 45-70. And I mean, like I shoot a 338, you shoot a 338, and we both have 300s and everything else, 7 millimeters.
Yeah.
All of those are phenomenal cartridges for hunting in Alaska. I think we did a whole episode on the most common cartridges that are used.
I think,
but there's just no reason in my head. I want that thing to drop as fast as possible, and that's why I like strong bullets and big calibers. That's just me. And
I like the larger. I shoot a 338 because I can.
Right. Yeah.
And it's easy for me. I had it magna ported, and I've had. I put a lot of work into it.
Yeah,
and
I've got a muzzle brake on mine.
Muzzle brake, and just I pull the trigger on it. It's the sweetest. There's no kick. I tried moving up and did the same work on a 375. And it's like, no.
So, really?
I'm good for 2 shots out of that 375, and both of them are going to be haywire. That's just me.
Yep.
30 out 6. I don't have a problem with some of that, but the largest caliber I could shoot comfortably was that 338.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And that's what I encourage anybody.
Yeah.
If you're going to do it, I mean, you get your larger caliber, that's all fine and dandy, but I think if you need to be comfortable with what you're shooting.
That is the most important part, because if you develop flinching and other bad shooting habits, you're going to be all over the place.
It's done. Yeah.
I would say for me, I've got a 375 as well, and I can get through, probably a day at the range with it. But where I developed, where I landed on the 338 was for the range, because with the right bullets and stuff like that, I like the ability that if I do shoot or somebody else shoots and I'm backing them up, and it runs out a little farther than most people are comfortable shooting, I still know
You can reach out and do something.
I can reach out and touch it.
There's
Yeah,
still
and
some
the
energy
375 is just, it's a little bit bigger, it's a little heavier, and so it putters out a little bit sooner. Whereas the 338s, you can really reach out and touch some stuff with those.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But back to the moose hunting areas. So you talked about no.
I'm not done yet.
No. Well, by all means, continue.
No, I'm not done. I'm not done hunting down there. I ain't giving it up. What do you want to know?
No. So you spoke about genetics played a big role,
Right.
Have you seen other moose? Because we have an area around Fairbanks where there seems to be a genetic where some of the brow tines will hang down low. They'll just kind of droop down low.
Mm-hmm.
And you can look at a moose and be like, yep, okay, we know roughly where that one was,
Mhm.
because we know that the genetics. I was wondering, have you seen others with those backwards paddles you were talking about on your
Never.
big one? Never.
Never.
Yeah.
No.
So it's kind of an anomaly for the area.
That it seems to be for that area.
Yeah.
I was really surprised.
Yeah.
But I've not seen that in, I mean, granted, a lot of the moose that you end up spotting, usually, I mean, it seems to come out in the brow tines.
Mm-hmm.
There's a reason they pick them, because they're easier to see.
Right.
But you look at some of them, some racks, I mean, it seems like the genetics that'll jump out to you here in Alaska is you either have a big, huge palm on the thing, which seems to be down in your southeast.
Mm-hmm.
You get up into your interior and you have a smaller palm, but it's spread out and a lot of stickers
Right.
out the side.
Right.
That seems to be what we
Mhm.
found.
How much time did it take to learn how to talk to moose? Was it pretty normal? Was it pretty, like, with the racking and the grunting and the calling, the cow calling? Did it come pretty natural, or did that take a lot of trial and error? And kind of walk through that, talking to moose.
I am by far, I don't care.
Really? Yeah, really. Yeah.
It's just, my boy, he's the one that cares.
Is it? Yeah.
Yeah, he's really, really interested in that.
Yeah.
Because it seems to be like we were talking earlier about, different. If I like to go later in the season, because you just try to catch the beginning of that rut.
Mm-hmm.
But if it's a warm fall,
Yeah.
you're going to have trouble, because they got no reason to come out.
Right.
I mean, but they've already established a territory when you
Mhm.
get there later in September. So you're playing in their territory. And I think I've called while I was blue in the face,
Mm-hmm.
and we've had moose where they say, everybody says, well, don't call too much.
Mm-hmm.
Well, so tell you another story. we were working on, we've seen some small bull, and we get up there and we start playing around calling, and he'd start rubbing with that oar,
Mm-hmm.
and we let out a whoa,
Yeah.
whoa. And we don't use no horns, none of that,
Mhm.
the bull horns or anything like
Right.
that.
Mhm.
Just,
Right.
whoa. And you start raking on the biggie's raking on them,
Yeah.
and that oar just makes the difference.
Oh,
And it
yeah.
just sounds like them. And I've heard that before when they were fighting. I've heard them fighting before,
Mm-hmm.
and I've heard them raking in the branches before. And the best thing I found that comes close to it is that oar.
Mhm.
Yeah.
And you start raking that oar, and the moose, nothing's happening. And then I go, whoa. And back in, also hear way back in the woods, whoa. He calls back and he's like, ooh,
Mhm.
hey, what's that?
Mm.
And they say don't call too much, but you answer it, whoa, and starts raking, and all you hear, it's like a freight train. Whoa, 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 and his whoa is coming out as he's hoofing it. He's like,
Yeah.
whoa, whoa, and he closed 100 yards in a heartbeat, and all of a sudden it starts coming through the woods. It's like, I'm out of here. It's like this is gonna hurt. Everybody talks about it. It's like oh man, and that's the one that because you get around whitetails that just I've seen we've had whitetails that are hard in the rut, and you can move those whitetails when they're in the rut and manipulate them. You can do the same thing with a big old bull moose, but the problem is, do you want to?
Right.
Yeah.
That's a big critter to have angry at you.
Because you're not another cow.
Right.
I mean, you're moved into his territory, and he is ticked.
Once you get them switched on with calling, it's hard to switch them off.
Exactly.
Really hard.
And they want to come out and check out what's going on.
Yeah.
And they're coming there for a purpose.
Yeah.
And we get into some horror stories on some of those, but they're easily manipulated once they're hard and once they start getting into that rut.
Yeah.
So what time of day do you tend to like to call the most? Are you mostly calling in the evening? Some guys are morning calling only, some guys are evening calling only, some guys call both times.
That seems to be, my son really wants to try to get into that deeper. Ours has always been circumstance driven.
Mm-hmm.
It's like, oh, there's a moose. I wonder if it's a big one. Let's find out. And you start trying to manipulate the area like that. I've seen some of those shows where, they get into some of that open area and they've got different bulls and they can tell which size bulls are where, or they get one big one and they're trying to move them. And stuff. So they'll try calling here and there.
Right.
And I could see where they're kind of, it spooks some of those bigger bulls, but I question some of that is what time why is it too early in the rut?
Yeah.
He doesn't want to mess around with a couple smaller ones, trying to fight and stuff or get in the middle of all that.
Or vice versa. If you have a non-dominant bull that's obviously not the head, kingpin of the area, and you've got, let's just throw numbers. If you have a 60-inch bull with 5 cows, and then you are hunting, and this is obviously not known to you, if he's 3 miles away, most of the cows are in a group with the 60-inch bull, but near you is a 40-incher that, as a resident in an any bull area, is legal and that you would shoot if you had the chance, presuming that you're in an any bull area. Well, if you start carrying on and grunting and raking and, morning and evening, just before light and then into the light of the morning and then just before dark and just into dark at night, and you're calling and calling and calling, there's a chance that he is going to interpret that as, oh, the 60-incher is back from his cows and he's looking for more girlfriends and he's trying to run me out of here, right?
Yes, but I think if you're in an area and if it's a highly dense moose population in that area, I think your approach has to be different. I think because yours would be more opportunistic, because you're there trying to call right on the edge of where that's his area, that's his bed, that's where that's his scrape, if you want to say,
right,
or his rub or scrape, however you want to picture it. I mean, but you're in his area. That's what he would be upset about.
Right.
But if you're a mile away and you got a bullhorn and you're trying to pull him out of that area and stuff, I don't think you're gonna.
Right.
I think you would have a hard time. I could be wrong, but I just don't think there's any reason for him to go out of there because he's going to cross 3 other moose's territories in the same thing. And why would he do that?
Yeah. And there is a lot of different theory that goes into calling and stuff like that. I mean, you'll hear some people say, they only cow call at night and bull grunt in the day. You'll hear other people say they do throughout the day. And I really like what you were saying earlier about how your son and you guys get real scientific with it. You do a lot of research into your area, the genetics in that area, the feed in that area. Well, there's a lot of science that goes into calling too, and a lot of people will say to set up a scenario, like you said, kind of reading the area as you're calling and figuring out which scenario is going to get the moose moving the direction you want. Is he more likely to be aggressive, or is there wandering bulls that are, in the area?
Right.
And there's a lot of great resources for that too. to do research on it. But I think in-field experience is really
that's
the
all
biggest thing.
it is. It's like, how do you judge the size of a brown bear?
Right.
We'll check out about 100 of them.
Yeah.
You know,
you can watch 100 videos or look at 100 bears in real life.
Yeah, it's a different world. It's like trying to get that rack. Just, is it big enough? Is it big enough? They'll allow you to at least give the brow tines to help you out, because there's a lot of 3 brow tines on 45-inch racks.
Yeah.
You know,
yeah. Well, I think, do you have any more questions?
I think we run a quick break here.
Yeah,
I
was going to say, let's run a quick break. And we got a really interesting question to come back with. So.
We have some fun stuff to cover yet. So
all right,
hang around. All right, folks. We all know that one of the most common mishaps in hunting is damage to your rifle scope. Last year, I found the solution to that problem with the Stealthy Hunter rifle cover. It wraps around your scope and actions securely to protect it from getting knocked off of zero or even severely damaged. Stealthy Hunter also has a glassing pad and a wide variety of supplements for the outdoorsman, such as protein powder, CBD products, turmeric, and gut health supplements. They also make a lightweight trauma kit weighing in at just 14 ounces that includes everything you need and nothing you don't for all of your backcountry medical emergencies. To shop all of their equipment and supplements, go to stealthyhunter.com and enter the discount code at checkout, The Northern Hunter, to save on your order today. All Stealthy Hunter equipment is proudly made in the USA.
Well, you mentioned earlier something about an 800-pound gorilla. So
you want to bring that up now?
Yeah. So speaking of the 800-pound gorilla in the room, you've got a Squatch story. I've heard about it. I haven't heard the story though.
I've heard about it. Which version did you hear?
Like I said, I haven't heard the story, but I've been told there is one.
Again, I've heard rumors of your story, but I haven't heard the details of it. So tell us your Bigfoot or cryptid encounter. Or
cryptid again. This isn't that type of podcast.
Hey,
bring the guy out with the biggest moose, and we'll knock him down a size. Tell me about Squatch.
See, now you're catching on.
See how that works?
Let's bring it down from giant Alaska bull moose to Bigfoot stories.
Bigfoot story.
Yeah. It's only knocking you down until they prove he's real.
Right.
And then suddenly now you have the biggest bull moose and the Squatch encounter that nobody believed in. So
you kind of have me at a disadvantage here because I'm not
just kind of sprung this on you last minute.
Exactly.
Well, this is called gotcha journalism.
I like that.
Oh, well, I mean, when it comes to Squatch, I mean, the problem is a whole lot of people think you're nuts.
Mm-hmm.
It used to be really bad. Now, I mean, the government's even saying UFOs are real.
Right. Yeah. Right.
It's not UFOs anymore. It's UAPs.
Sure, them too.
Yeah.
We got another name for Squatch.
Yeah, right.
Cryptid? I don't know.
Yep.
Oh, but I think for myself, it's been a crazy journey when it comes to something like Squatch.
Mm.
Growing up in Western New York, I can go on for Squatch encounters, and I think are we allowed to mention other podcasts here?
Sure,
because I am an avid Sasquatch Chronicles. I've listened to a ton of them, and what happens is you listen to those things just like you listen to podcasts on hunting big moose.
Right.
Yeah, you learn things, and I was always of the mindset, I've been in the woods so long, so many times that it just can't be.
Right.
And I would have seen it or something. And having educated myself, just like educating for the big moose, I'm trying to validate myself here the best I can. But when I was a younger lad, I would I was with some friends and we're walking up this creek bed late afternoon. And something crossed, and like I said, we just never seen many deer in those days. And something ran across on it, and in my mind, I quantified it, because it was up around the bend, and it was looking through a bunch of brush and everything. And I had been like 11, 12.
Mm-hmm.
And in my own mind, it's like, wow, that must have been a couple of deer.
Mm-hmm.
But the color was wrong. And it was arms and legs, instead of just all legs. But what else is there?
Mhm.
You know, you grow up if you're in that mindset, I'm deer hunting,
Right.
deer hunting.
Right.
Yeah.
That's all you're going to ever see is deer
Right.
sign. And you don't realize that. And when we left that area, the creek bed was probably 40 feet wide. And you could see the stones. It was only like 4 inches of water, 6 inches of water rolling on this thing. And you flip rocks looking for crawdads and stuff. And you get the silt comes moving out. And it was from one side of the bank. There was one rock that was disturbed, then to the other side of the bank. And I'm only 11, 12 years old.
Right.
And I remember saying to myself, wow, those deer can jump. And it's like, and it cleared this bank on the other side. You don't even see where it went through on all these briar thickets and stuff. And it's like, whoa. And never thought about it much after that. But I worked hard to convince myself. I remember particularly trying to convince myself that was deer.
Mm-hmm.
But how do you put, when it's arms and legs, it must have just been a couple of deer side by side,
Mm-hmm.
Right.
you know, for that much movement.
Yeah.
And so you go from that story, and I can go on and on about, I mean, I don't know how far you want to go with this, because this is not a Sasquatch
Okay.
Well,
deal.
I'll say this. So there are a lot of people that think Sasquatch believers are crazy,
Right.
and think it's weird that people would even believe in that. But in my experience, you'd be amazed how many people I've spoken to in the hunting community that spend a lot of time out in the woods, that when you ask them if they believe in Sasquatch, they're like, yeah, of course. Like, and it's so this isn't like a Sasquatch podcast by any stretch of the imagination,
No.
but I'm sure there are plenty of people here that would, you know, appreciate stories and
Well, it went, I mean, we could do an entire podcast on
Mhm.
growing up. And I mean, I remember I was with avid whitetail hunters,
Mm-hmm.
and these guys, I remember coming out, and, you know, there were different type of whitetail hunters, guys that would drive the woods and other guys that were stealthy.
Mhm.
I used to spend so much time in the woods. I would meet up with a guy, her uncle was
Mhm.
out of Massachusetts,
Okay.
and we would meet up in the summertime, and we would just miles of
Mhm.
where we're going to hunt this fall.
Yeah.
And he would travel for miles. I would find a spot to sit for hours on end.
Mm.
And so we had two different philosophies, but we would go back in the woods and track that stuff. And our whole mindset was always deer hunting. And I remember coming out of the woods. Everybody shows the rallies up at dark, and I come walking out at night, and I would tell these guys, I was like, man, these guys got a different way of driving the woods down here. That's all they're doing is knocking on trees.
Mm.
And they'll look at me like, what's wrong with you? And I was only 16, 17-year-old kid at that time.
Right.
I said, yeah, they're just banging on these trees. And I mean, you go down, anybody who looks at any Squatch history, I mean, that's where the tree knocks and stuff. And I mean, so I've gone from that to tree structures and having dealt with that. I mean, I walked into one tree structure. I mean, the one that scares me to death is I walked into a tree structure, and I could describe it,
Mm-hmm.
what it was. And I thought it was somebody. I was like, kids. I'm like, why would kids come all the way out here to build something like this?
Right.
And didn't think anything of it. 2 years later, I'm hunting 100 miles away, different area in New York.
Mm-hmm.
And I come walking up, and identical.
Really.
I mean, it pulled the hair in the back of my head. Safety came off the gun.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm looking around, and it was an active place. I mean, there was a dead, I think it was an owl, tore inside out laying there. And I'm like, oh, of course, your mindset is like, okay, somebody's doing something satanic up here. 'Cause
Right.
like I said, and that's what it is.
Yeah.
It's like, it's deer hunting, you know?
Yeah.
And you're stuck with that. And I can go on and on about some of those. And so our mindset's different in the woods.
Mm-hmm.
And having been in rural community here in Alaska, so now I'll bring you up to Alaska with that stuff.
Yeah.
And you can go on and on about some of the cryptic stuff here in Alaska, but you listen to some of these natives, and they tell you some of these stories. And we're back in the middle of nowhere, no man's land where we go,
Mm-hmm.
and we've gotten out of the boat. And you know how you get a grizzly bear catches the right stride, and it'd be the rear paw and the front paw, and it just makes one big monster track and stuff. Well, if you really know your tracks, you can pull that apart and see where the impression from the rear prints.
Right.
And I mean, my son and I mean, he's the one, rule number one, you don't talk about it.
Yeah.
Because you don't talk about it, because it seems like if you talk about it, you're going to bring that stuff onto yourself. And so we both, we pull the boat up at one spot, and we get out, and we're walking on the bank. We're looking at the bear tracks, and walking where the bear had gone through the woods, and the willows are already big holes through the willows where the bear had been traveling back and forth. And we're looking at the bear. Yep, there's the big one. I was like, whoa, wow, that's a small one there. And we both look down at the same time, and we look at this one print, and we go, and we turn around, walk, and get in the boat and leave. I mean, it just, I mean, we can go on with different stories like that. And then I've got some native friends, really dear friends. And these guys are guides too. And whips out their phone, explain this. And it's pictures of stuff. I mean, it could be like a blob squatch, but it's like, what is that? What's that in the tree? And I'll tell you what, sun's going down, you're looking at that on your phone, it's like, I go, wow, I don't know. Looks like a blob. He goes, yeah, doesn't it? Flips the phone over and says, this was when I went in an hour earlier. Where's the blob? And it's like, whoa. It's like, okay, what is that? I don't know. It's a trick of the light. And generally people who discount that are discounting it because they want you to prove it to them.
Right. Yeah.
But if you get out there and you bump into some of these things, I think for myself, having been, what do I have to lose here?
Yeah.
I've got the trophy. I've got, I've got all the means. I don't care what anybody thinks or says.
Right.
I'm just telling you what I bumped in against.
Yeah. Well, and that tends to be the case with people that are willing to talk about it. Is they're just they got nothing to win or lose by saying it, really. And that's just they're being honest about what they see. Now there are, of course, the people on certain TV channels that
make a lot of money,
just like the ghost chasers and everything else. It's all just for publicity. But I mean, I don't know. I got no reason to say it couldn't be. I don't have any personal experiences, but I got no reason to say it couldn't be.
My whole theory, I shouldn't say, my twist on the thing is everybody, what is it? It's, I know this much. Killing an animal, when you go to kill an animal, you're exploiting one of its senses.
Yeah.
I mean, that's all you're doing. These things are not smart. Whitetails are not smart. Yeah. Everybody says, oh, wily old whitetail. I'm sorry. When you kill a whitetail, you've exploited one of its senses.
Yeah.
And you're capitalizing it. I mean, why are we trying to cover up our scent?
Right. Right. Yeah. And they're alert, but they're not. Yeah.
But when you're out there, these things are, there's some thought. There's some intelligence to this.
Yeah.
And it's like, that's something different.
Okay. Yeah. Okay. So a couple of questions I have here.
Go for it.
This is all related. I have listened to a few other podcasts in this realm, just mainly for, honestly, just for entertainment. I get curiosity, like, what do people actually think exists? So, and these are a few questions that I've come up with. And this is just to clarify my position on it. I'm on the skeptical side of it.
Absolutely.
Not because I don't think it's possible, but because, traditionally speaking, people in my circle, we'll just say, are not prone to believe in stuff like that, right?
Sure.
So my first question would normally be, why haven't we physically recovered one? Whether it died of old age, or we found a burial site, or someone shot one. Number two, what do we think it is? Is it an actual physical being, or is the theory that it's something different? And number three, do you think that there are people out there that have seen something that they think is tied to this? We'll just call it the greater Bigfoot theory. and that they've seen something, whether physical evidence or they saw it with their own eyes, whether it was a track or they actually saw one, in person, had a sighting. And that because of the surrounding stigma about the people that, quote unquote, believe, the believers of Bigfoot theories, because of what that has traditionally meant in our society, do you think that there's a lot of folks with information that will not come forward and will never come forward with evidence because of that stigma surrounding it?
I think it's a different world than it was 15 years ago. In the age of social media and generational wise, I don't think there's much that can happen without somebody hearing about something. Put it this way. If you listen to Sasquatch Chronicles, what's he going up on 1,000 episodes?
I don't know.
I mean, if you actually listen to some of those stuff, I mean, they're all the same theme. There's probably 3 different types of Squatch that they come up with. Where do you find all these people to come up with these stories?
Yeah.
That's somebody's seeing something. Even some of these hunting shows, they've got some of that stuff out there. What's that black thing running through the woods?
Yeah.
I mean, you run into that. That's why I'm saying there's an element of intelligence with this. And, that's why I draw that concept, because you have no reference point of going off.
Right.
Other than what other people say. Do I believe it? Yeah. I think some of the side notes on some of the stuff is we went back east into Western New York and I went deer hunting. It's been a long time.
Yeah.
I think it was 3 years ago. I went back there and hunting back east is different than it was when I left, because you just can't hunt anywhere anymore. I mean, it's all that, but there was a small patch of land that I was able to hunt. And my boy was up there and he hunts it hard. And when he goes back there during, for whitetail, and he goes back there and I go back in there to meet him. And I walked in that woods, and him and I approach the woods different now than I ever did.
Yeah.
Just because of that.
Right.
Of listening and learning. It's like your world changes after you see Jaws. You just don't go in the water anymore. It's like, I love scuba diving. Then you see Jaws. Well, not so much.
Right.
A little snorkeling here and there. Never hurt nobody in about 1.5 feet of water. But that's the approach.
So I live in the interior.
Exactly. There you go. And so I had gone back east and I walked in that woods, and as I'm working my way back in the trail, I noticed these massive X's. There's X's all over the place. I mean, you're talking trees that are like 6 to 8 inches in diameter that are long, probably 18 feet, 20 feet long, and they're big, massive X's. And there's no root structure on them, and there's no other end. I mean, they're just snapped off. And it's like, whoa. And I'm looking at these things, and I'm working my way back to trail, and I go back to my boy, and I catch up to him, and I go, really? And he goes, you see it too, huh? And sure enough, and we were hunting with a non-believer.
Yeah.
We were telling him there's a lot of Squatch in this woods. Yeah, you guys are nuts. But he says, man, I don't know what it was. He says, I'm standing there and it's pitch black trying to get in the woods before it's light out,
Right.
So he's back there and he's smoking a cigarette and he getting ready to go back in the woods. And he says, it was just like a horse just walking away from me. He says, this thing was big. It was just like a horse that just walking through. It was black on black and just walking. He goes, but it was dark. And it walked away from him. I go, why didn't you shoot it? He goes, could have been a person. Therein is why people don't pull the trigger on it.
Right, yeah.
And he says he's hunting in one area and he kills this monster buck. But he says, yeah, the guy pushed it to me. I go, what guy? And he says, there's a long corridor down a electrical easement or something that cleared, and it's all. He says, this guy come walking out of the woods way down there. He's in a ghillie suit. He's hunting in a ghillie suit. I go, what are you talking about? There ain't no ghillie suits. I said, that's Squatch. He goes, you're nuts. I'm like, I'm not the one that's seen it. He goes, who's more nuts, the guy in the ghillie suit? I said, so he sees that, and of course now we cut up his deer, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I've got some photos of this. And they cut up the deer and they take the heart or the liver and they set it up in the tree, in the V of a tree, and they cut up the rest of it and they pull this deer out of there and dragging it out and everything. And they're going to come back for the heart and lungs or the heart and the liver and all that stuff. And they go by, drag it past all those X's and they leave that heart and they come back up later in the afternoon. They come walking in there and the heart's gone.
Wow.
And, there's nothing there. Heart, liver, everything's gone. And right where it was in the V of that tree, there was a small X out of small branches laid up in there. And it's like,
wow.
So you tell me.
Right.
And it's like, and it's, but you can go on and on about some of this stuff. But I think for me up here in Alaska, having, I heard all the cryptic stories, having traveled around a lot of these remote villages and stuff. And probably, you can go on and on.
So define for me what cryptic means.
Who knows?
Or
where do you want to go? That's what I hear on all the other podcasts. There's a cryptic podcast about, it's something. I mean, you can go into UFOs, you can go into monsters, you can go into Wolfman.
Is it cryptic or cryptid?
Sure.
I'm not even sure at this point.
I can say that is true though, that when you speak to the people that live way out there in the boonies and everything, I mean it's almost common knowledge to a lot of the elders and stuff like that. And there's entire towns. There's what's the name of it? Port Chatham, is that it? Port Chatham.
Port.
It's down by Seward.
Portlock.
And they or no, not by Seward, sorry, by Homer.
By Homer.
It's down by Homer, yeah. And
Portlock. Isn't it Portlock?
It might be. I'll have to look it up. But one of those, it's gone now.
Yeah.
And when you look up the entire reason why everybody says they left is they were being basically terrorized by a
Bigfoot.
Large furry man in the woods.
Yeah.
Wait. Back up.
There's an entire ghost town in Alaska.
Yep.
And the reason it's a ghost town is because they were being terrorized by Bigfoot.
They did a show on that.
Yeah. It's like in the history of the town why they left.
There was hunters that went out that never came back.
Yeah.
They would go up into the woods and there's a long, because it used to be a canning factory or something.
I think so, yeah.
Yeah, canning and logging. And they were exploiting all the resources, but a lot of those guys, they just packed up and left overnight.
Yeah, it was literally overnight.
A ghost town.
Now, I'll say that you said you're on the skeptical side. I am not a full, I'm not a full tilt boogie believer. I can't say for definite.
Yeah.
But I will say I'm on the hopeful side. I hope it's true. And I could see it being true because the evidence I go back to is different cultures at different times before the World Wide Web, before, there was a ton of intercontinental communication. And you go to every continent and they all have the same story. And like he said, with the collaborations of different stories from different people, how do you get thousands of people all having the same story? Now, I've never had any kind of an encounter myself. I've never found anything. I've never seen anything suspicious that would lead me to that, except how does that same story go back so far everywhere?
So
it's like if you see a horse, a picture of a horse somewhere, it's like,
right.
It's like you just believe they had horses in both places. I don't see.
I am by nature skeptical.
Yeah.
Yeah, he is.
Well, you can confirm.
But there is a large part of me that has. Yeah, I think the way that you put it, James, is good. I'm hopeful.
Yeah.
I think it would be neat.
Yeah.
Here's my personal comparison to it. We have zero idea what's in the bottom of the ocean. None.
Mm-hmm.
We as human beings, we do not know what's down there.
But we haven't hung out there like we
That's where Sasquatch lives. Sorry, I just couldn't
Get
help
into
it.
that, Mariah.
I just couldn't help it.
So, to me, in this modern day, right? In the age of technology, right? Do I think it could be possible? Absolutely.
Yeah.
And I'm at the place where personally I see two sides of the Bigfoot theories, right? And for those that might not even know, I didn't even know this until just now. I Googled what is a cryptid. And a cryptid is a term used in cryptozoology to refer to an animal or plant whose existence or survival is disputed or unsubstantiated by scientific evidence. Cryptids are often creatures known only from folklore or legend, such as Sasquatch, the Loch Ness Monster, or the Yeti. Okay. I don't think that it's impossible that there's something out there we don't know about.
Yeah.
I do not think that. I also don't think that it's impossible that there is more than just a physical aspect to this theory. Okay.
Well, correct.
That's a whole different ball game.
So I will say, if you jump down the Bigfoot rabbit hole far enough, there are a lot of people that have these theories that it's a being that can go through portals and it has telepathic abilities,
and then
it has
you
all
listen to things about like the Skinwalker Ranch
stuff.
theories,
and it's I don't think any of that.
So
I don't fall for any of that.
Okay, you open the door.
Hang in there, folks. We're gonna get weird on this one.
I think we're beyond that point, but yeah.
So
there you go.
there is a twist. There's a segment of people. I mean, let me say that. It's like everybody says, "Why isn't there a picture?" Of course, you have the film and stuff. And of course, the other side of that coin is if you had a picture today. Is it real or did it AI generate it?
Right.
I mean, so it doesn't do any good.
I
to
think
have
Joe
a picture.
Rogan brought that up just not too long ago.
Not having not heard any of that twist, but in reality, that's what you're up against these days. But the guy who had seen that ghillie suit and all that stuff, he's back in the woods and he's hunting that same thing, and he's standing in his tree stand or up against a tree, just a stand spot where he picked, and he's looking and he says like 40 yards away, he goes, what is that? He goes, a stump? And he says, yeah, that's a weird looking stump. He whips out his phone, he picks up his phone, takes a picture of it. He said, you know how you pull it up and admire your picture? Pulls it up and he's admiring it and there's nothing there. And he's looking right at it. Picks the phone back up, takes another picture. Pulls it up, not there. Does that 3 times. Finally, he looks up again and it's gone. He goes, now that stump that I couldn't get a picture of is gone. He's like, it was a big old, what was it? I don't know. I think for myself, this is what gets me in trouble. And like I said, I already killed the big, I don't care.
There you
killed
go.
the big moose. Yeah. It doesn't matter.
I drag everything through the scriptures.
Yeah.
And I mean,
Right, yeah.
There was a whole lot cast out of heaven when Satan got tossed out of heaven. And, we wrestle not against flesh and blood, but against principalities and spiritual wickedness in high places. That's another dimension. There's a whole battle taking place around us, and I is it, I think it's just like a UFO.
Yeah.
Dimensional.
Okay.
See it? There it is. What are you going to do? Is it flesh and blood? I mean, I don't know. Does an angel bleed? I don't know. I don't know these things.
My final question on the subject, because I'm not swayed one way or the other. Like I said,
sure.
Yeah.
Maybe
all the conversation in the world ain't going to move you.
No.
Until you see him, he comes right. Tells that he's a believer.
So that's not necessarily true, but I haven't done enough homework into it to have an opinion. Honestly, I'm willing to give anything a fair shot as long as it's brought with realism and fact.
Yeah.
Okay. My question is to you, whether or not I believe in it or not, because I don't have a solid opinion either way. You're out moose hunting here in September, less than a month away.
And
you're on the fields on a riverbank somewhere, and one walks out. You pulling the trigger?
I think it would be circumstance driven. And I think that's a hesitation of a lot of people, because why?
Yeah.
And most hunters are like that.
Right.
Why?
Right.
Well, you could up your big moose.
True statement.
Yeah.
Life-size Bigfoot now.
Hey, number one, Boone and Crocket.
What I think. True. I mean, if you listen,
You got a new category in Boone and Crocket.
somebody ought to inform them. Oh.
So you wouldn't shoot it for fear of, number one, the unknown of what it really is. And number two, obviously, you're afraid that it's just a big, hairy dude.
If it was confrontational, it wouldn't hesitate.
Right. Yeah.
If it's just there, no. But I've also, so I become a closet Squatch guy listening to different things. And if you listen to enough of them, if there's one, there's more.
Yeah.
Mhm.
And if you tag one of these things, oh my goodness, hang on tight.
I mean,
You better-
hey, who
Yeah.
knows?
What's that?
I mean, what's with the werewolves, right? You got to use a silver bullet. So what if you?
you hear you hear encounters of people that have killed them, and they bury them,
yeah.
or some guys that have shot. And there's guys that have been in a cabin, they shot one,
Yeah.
and they're in that cabin in Washington. If you're having the same podcast, same discussion down in Washington, there's a group of people that look at you like, "What's your problem?"
Right.
I
yeah.
mean, the history of that cabin was, they shot one, it fell over the bank, and all hell broke loose.
Yeah.
And they were shooting all night
Shot
long.
one
'cause
what?
these things- A Bigfoot.
Okay.
They killed it. It went down. They saw it go down, and it had friends. And,
Yeah.
and it got stupid at that point where they're lobbing rocks and everything and just smashing. They're held up in the cabin shooting all night long. They were running out of ammo.
I've read that story.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly.
I have, yeah.
You're going to have to hook me up with that story.
So here's the thing. You said you hadn't done enough research to have an opinion.
Yeah.
I haven't either. But that's why I say I'm hopeful, not a believer.
Yeah.
But I have done a lot of research because it's fascinating,
You're just
right?
not admitting it. You're one of those closet guys.
Because it's interesting, right? Like it's
Closet.
interesting stuff to look at the history, look at the reports, look at the accounts and everything.
Yeah.
I got no problem saying that.
Yeah.
Like,
right.
And I think it is fascinating that all of the research you do. And when you go back far enough, you would ask why there hasn't been encounters, why we haven't connected. If you go back in history, even 100, 150 years, there are accounts.
Teddy
of that.
Roosevelt.
Yeah.
Really?
Teddy?
Now, if
Or-
if you read into them, obviously read them with discretion, read them with, an open mind.
Right.
And
Well, it's right in his
and-
book.
and-
Was that Teddy or Theodore?
The same.
Yeah. Same.
Teddy and Theodore are the same.
Teddy,
Teddy's
TR,
Theodore.
and Theodore.
Which Roosevelt was it? Was riding a horse?
And
Yeah.
that was
Back when
Theodore.
TR.
And
Yeah.
it's in his book.
yeah.
He came across and he had shot. I mean, it knocked him off his horse. He had a big encounter on
In
that
North
whole thing.
America or
Oh, yeah.
in South America?
No, North America.
Or
Yeah.
Africa?
No, so I just think it's a fascinating topic
I
to
mean-
Yeah,
research.
yeah.
I mean,
Yeah.
whether it's real or not doesn't change my life one way or another, but it's fascinating to read about. I would say I wanted to touch on something. So, you touched on the spiritual warfare that's going on all around us.
Mhm.
And I think it's important for people to realize that when you're reading those things, in the Bible and what it talks about, that those aren't just bedtime stories. That is real. And if you're going to believe in Scripture and in God and in the Bible, that you have to take it for what it is. Do you think that? Am I understanding you're
Go
saying
for it. Yeah,
you
you got
think
it. You got
Bigfoot is tied in with that in some way? Maybe not knowing exactly how, but
I think for myself, I have to drag everything through the scripture.
exactly.
And it's like,
Yes.
where
Yeah.
does this fit in?
Right.
Well, if you're going to fit in, a lot of people chase the origin. If you look, that it's part of the Nephilim and they
Mhm.
go on to different things.
Right.
And if you just took it at face value for what you do know,
Mm-hmm.
what do I know? I know that Satan got tossed out of heaven and he took an innumerable amount of angels with him.
Yeah.
And so where do they end up? Here on earth. And so where is it? It's a dimensional aspect.
Mhm.
And that warfare going on around us. And you can see that negative influence in
Mhm.
society today.
Right.
I mean, whether you believe or don't believe, that's irrelevant to the to what
Ultimately,
I'm the
yeah.
one on the podcast. I'm the one telling you what I think.
Right.
But that's so where does it fit into what we have until you actually have a body of one, and then you run into the problem. Okay, you have thousands of people that seen this thing, and everybody knows somebody that has this experience. I'm talking to executives, in business where I'm at. I'm exposed to a whole lot of these big oil guys.
Yeah.
And you talk to these big oil guys, and they're always out at a camp somewheres, and everybody's drinking and shooting and going on and on. And you bring up the squad, and there's guys that tell you right out, these are guys that are, the upper echelon of the industry, and they'll just, I seen it.
Yeah.
And it's like they don't even bat an eye.
Yeah.
And it's like, okay, so if you have that many people that have seen this, what is it?
Right.
Where does it fit in?
Right.
And why don't we have a body?
Yeah.
And
that's why I think it's so fascinating.
Why does it have to be, this is a hunting podcast. Why does it have to be hunting? Why does it have to be an animal?
Yeah.
That's
a good point.
And
I guess, yeah.
That's,
I guess I've always assumed it was an animal.
That's back to what I was talking about in my original questions was, do you think that there is more than just a physical possibility to this?
Yeah.
What I was referring to is, do you think that it is a
spiritual being?
Being. Because that is one of the few theories that I have heard in the very minimal research I've done into it.
If you look at like Portlock, I think it is that we were talking about down that entire. There's no doubt that used to be a town and it is no more because there was this beast that terrorized them and people died.
Right.
But also on the side of that was they would see this woman in a long flowing gown.
I had read that.
And it's like, where does that fit into any of this?
Yeah. I do remember reading about that.
You hear these stories like that. Yeah. And somehow explain to me in that same area that they have in trees, 4 or 5 foot in diameters, pulled up from its roots, twisted upside down and shoved back in the ground with the roots sticking up in the air. 12, 15. And you Google that.
Yeah.
Just Google tree structures or upside root structures in Southeast Alaska. Where did they come? Who put them there?
Right.
And you couldn't do that with a machine. And it's like, and so, you get going on some of that stuff.
Right.
But the biggie for me is I've got these Alaska Native friends that are guides, and they can tell you growing up with them, and they told me, I heard a story that made the hair stand up on the back of my head. In my back of my neck, just last week. I shouldn't say it, last year. But these guys will just tell you these stories, and it goes on and on and on. And it's like, what do they have? They don't care. They don't care if you believe or not.
I was in Point Hope last week. And we were up there for like 3.5 days to site a church, and we got it done in 3.5 days. So we didn't meet a lot of people or anything, but talking to Brother Sereno up there, he said that the natives there talk about the little people. The little people.
Why did I know that before you even said
exactly the little people and the little people, and you only see them like in the mountains. They don't come out and all this kind of stuff. And he goes, who knows if they're real or whatever. But one of the guys with us was like, he totally like swallowed it hook, line, and sinker. Just completely was like, wait, really? What are you talking? Like, oh, he goes, yeah, one of the guys said one let him out of a storm and all this kind of stuff, last year or something. And he's like, really? He Brother Sereno doesn't really believe they exist, at least not how, not as a tribe of little people. But
you want my little people story?
Well, and I didn't know you had one. But.
So that's when in the early days when I was up there, I was filling in for missionaries out there, and you would always hear. Those kids were sold on it. Little people, and if you go out to the dumps in those early days, all they had were honey buckets. They didn't have the septic sewers and stuff hooked up in there. So you go out there, and the boardwalk all the way to the dumps would have honey buckets skewed long before they ever got to the dumps. You figure, wow, it was just disgusting. Well, the reality is a lot of them didn't want to go to the dumps because that's where the little people were hanging out. So a lot of these kids that had to go empty those honey, I say they would dump it early, and they would come back, and there was countless stories of those kids. They would see something.
Really?
Never thought much of it. Of course, then you get down towards the interiors and stuff, and that turns into Bigfoot at that point. Well, I was in the interior, and we were out in the boat. We were looking for a place to go pike fishing and stuff. We're in some of the side sloughs and stuff off the Yukon. And we're way up. We're way up. And we're in the middle of nowhere. And I mean, this slough's narrowing up and narrowing up and narrowing up. And it comes to a big old Y. I mean, we go so far and you get trees down and you have to get the saw out just to go further. But man, you're up there with no water and you get some monster pike. And we're trying to get up there. We get so far. It's like, man, I got to take a leak. Middle of summertime. I got to jump out. And you go to jump out of the boat. Right on the land. I mean, the width of the boat is probably the slough, if not twice the width of the boat. It's getting that bad. But the banks were steep on both sides, and it's all muddy, swampy. And I go to jump out and stand in the high grass, and I go to jump out, and I'm standing there relieving myself. I look down, and there's this footprint. It's a bare foot. It's bare. I mean, it's small. It looks like
So bear is in BARE.
No. A barefoot person, 5-toed person.
Yeah.
And it's in the mud and it's perfect. And you look, and then there's another one. Like they're walking. They walked up or walked across the water, and it's like, for one, you would have to have somebody in a boat all the way up in the middle of nowhere. And they would have to get out in their bare feet and walk out and walk up on this bank where I just happened to be. And you could see where it walks right up in the harder ground and disappears at that point. And the grass has got to be 3 foot tall at that point.
Yeah.
And it's like, and I remember my boy was with me. I call him over, look at this. And we look down and he goes, oh my. And it's like, who would be up here? And we weren't, it didn't click. And this had to have been 8-10 years ago. It's like never clicked, and we ended up coming. We turned around. We left that day, but he was big. He says that's little people, and it's just the little people. And it's
any footprints coming back down the bank?
No, this was just one set. He just went up from that spot.
Weird. I haven't looked into that. That's interesting stuff.
But there's an entire thing on little people that actually saved the boys. There was a boy who, I'm trying to remember the story, but it's in Alaska. It was downriver, and he got lost, and they kept him alive in the rock.
Wow.
Underground. And he can tell, and this boy was there for a while, and he can tell you and describe in detail, and you could talk to him today. I mean, when he was 5-6 years old, he could tell you exactly all that stuff.
Wow.
And stuff. But
Interesting.
Yeah.
So one of the story that I heard was, just very brief, but that one of the guys had been out, was hunting in the mountains south of Point Hope, was like 40 miles or something.
Sure.
And he lost in a snowstorm or something, or rain or something, lost the trail. He said, and next thing he knows, he sees this little guy out in front of him running, like waving to follow. So he follows him, he takes him to the trail, and then ran off. That was the story.
You hear a lot of you hear.
I'll have to look into that more. That's fascinating stuff. If you guys can't tell, I like this kind of stuff.
Oh yeah. if nothing else, it makes for new entertainment outside of other hunting podcasts.
So now that you lost all the hunters, and we've got
right.
new listeners now.
Let's
thank you for your honesty, though.
Yeah.
and for sharing. I mean, that's
exactly.
I love hearing those stories and everything.
Yeah.
And
if nothing
like I
else,
said, I'm very hopeful.
Yeah. If nothing else, even for we'll just call them non-believers, then, even if I'm in that boat, then it might be an interesting conversation. But as we promised, we're circling back to crazy Kodiak stories.
You are crazy Kodiak.
Because, Jeff, I've known you for, man, I've probably at least known of you most of my life.
Yeah, you've been around a lot.
I remember playing card games with you and your wife and my folks when I was a young kid. when we were back stateside for a short time. So with that history,
Poker, 5-card stud.
no,
What
I'm
was
pretty
it?
sure it was rummy or something.
Right,
yeah,
right.
yeah, something like that. Of course, I was the card shark and you lost, and
Exactly.
you still owe me, but that's a different conversation.
Right.
So we can catch up on that later. So, but my point of saying all of that, I really do have a point to bring all that up, is that I've heard crazy Kodiak stories about you and your old hunting party for a long time. Some pretty wild brown bear encounters. And obviously, all of us here love a nice, good adrenaline-filled brown bear story.
I mean, we believe that.
So yeah. I mean, as outdoor enthusiasts that we are,
right?
I mean, we all believe in brown bears, so lay it on us.
Really?
Sorry, this is just too easy. This is just too easy.
The jabs keep coming.
So take us back to your first time on Kodiak when you had an adverse encounter with a brown bear. What was that like?
I'm trying to figure out which one you're talking about.
So first one, just go back to the first one.
I think the first thing, my baptism to Kodiak,
baptism by fire.
I listened to a whole lot of people. I wanted to go blacktail hunting on Kodiak.
Yeah,
because you don't pull a tag for
just over the counter.
Yeah, you don't pull a tag for bear. You put in for it.
Yeah,
your chance of getting on 1 in a gazillion.
Right.
And so it's like, okay, I'm not going to get a tag, but I want to go black bear hunting.
Yeah.
So I went down there and I talked to a lot of people that had gone there black bear hunting. And the big deal was
black bear hunting or black-tailed deer
I'm
hunting.
Sorry, blacktail hunting.
Sorry.
Deer
Yeah.
hunting. It comes off, falls off the tongue like that.
Yeah.
So, and so it's like, okay, they said there's a ton of bears down there.
Yeah.
Of course, everybody's scared of the bears.
Right.
They said, as long as you're in your tent at night,
yeah,
the bears own the night. Don't go out of your tent at night. Just stay in your tent. You'll be fine. They'll leave you alone. And so I go down there with my buddy JB, and we're looking for this piece of property that he bought down there, and we're going to put up a cabin, and we had all the answers. So we had a tent and all that stuff, and I had a good Arctic oven tent, and so it's like, okay, let's go do this. So we go down there to Kodiak, and we get up there on Kodiak. We get a guide with a boat and takes us out there, and all we had was a picture of what the shoreline looked like, and it's like, oh, there it is. Of course, now sun's down. It's getting dark. And we jump out and we go up there with all our stuff. We're packing it up there, and we hurry up and set up the tent. And that's our first night where it's pitch black and we're in Kodiak Island. It's like, this is great. Let's get in the tent where it's safe.
Now, what time of year was this? Was this
October?
Or
This had to have been September, October.
Okay.
Somewhere's in there.
Yeah.
And so I go into the tent, and we're in the tent. Somewhere's about 1 o'clock in the morning, because everything that moves, every little crack or crumb, you just hear it. And it just, I'm up. And my hands on, I got me a 9mm. I'm hanging on to this. And I kept thinking, I listen, my buddy sound asleep snoring. He sounds like the bear. He's like, and I'm like, oh, this is not good.
I've heard him snore.
Oh my word.
Yeah.
And so I'm laying there in this cot in this tent, and there's this layer of nylon between me and Yogi. It's like, and the words kept coming back to me. As long as you're in your tent at night, you'll be safe. And I'm thinking to myself, my head's up against this nylon. Has anybody told the bear this? Because I have a hard time imagining how this thin piece of nylon is going to keep this bear out of here.
Yeah.
And it's like, this is nuts.
Now,
I remember we get up in the morning. I looked at my buddy JB. He goes, what do you think? And I says, I think we need to build a cabin. Now.
Now, how did that go down? Did you just hear it? Did it just wander into camp and wander out, or
the bear itself?
Yeah.
Well, we would get, we seen a couple bears passing through here and there, and they would come by, and they would, you're supposed to set up a bear fence.
Yeah, yeah.
And those bear will come in there. If you have an electric fence, they always come and lead with their nose. I don't care if it's pitch black, pouring rain, what the deal is. They're going to lead with their nose, and they're going to pop that fence.
Yep.
And somehow I think this little piece of wire and nylon is going to keep the bear out.
Mhm.
You know, and so the bear, I mean, there's times where you would have bears, you'd hear them walk right by the tent.
Yeah.
And it's like, this is just not right. It's just not right.
But yeah, I mean, you're here. I mean, maybe the tent worked. I don't know. It's
It's hard to argue that point. I'll tell you what. So as we were talking there off the air there, and my poor buddy JB, God rest his soul, he had some incidents where he shot the wrong animal and had to turn it in, and he was goat hunting up on top of Kodiak, and we were supposed to meet the following week. He was going to go goat hunting, and we're going to meet down at the bottom for a week and go deer hunting. I didn't go up on top of the goat hunting. I couldn't do it. It was a scheduling. And he's up there, and he shot a goat, and he's fleshing it out in a camp. And he says, Jeff, it was just like somebody tapped me on the shoulder and said, turn around. He says, I turned around, and here he comes. And he says, it was big. He says, it was big. And he grabbed his gun and yelled to another buddy of his who was there with him. And they come running out. And he had a 45-70, or his buddy had a 45-70. He always hunted with a 300 Ultra Mag.
Mhm.
Okay. Yeah.
So he was nuts. And he shot in front of that bear. Bear's got his nose on the ground.
Yeah.
And rock flew up at it. And he's yelling and screaming at the bear. And he says, that bear didn't even flinch. He says it kept coming. Them rocks hit that bear square in the head from that bullet. And he said he just kept coming. And he stung it. He says, he told his buddy, he said, I'm going to shoot. And he hit him. And that bear stood up. And it's probably 20 yards. And it stood right up. And as it came down, he cracked it with that 45-70. And he says, Jeff, I was impressed with that gun ever since.
Mm-hmm.
He says he hit it with that 45-70 and lifted that bear. He said he lifted his paw right off the ground.
Wow.
He says it rocked. That bear turned and started quartering away, and they shot it again. They shot it again. They shot it again until it went down the side of the hill and it went behind the bushes. And he says it stood there. He says it was the longest 10 minutes of their life. It's back there thrashing, and those guys are scared to death.
Oh, yeah.
And it finally lets out a death moan, and it was over.
Those brown bears don't have much of a moan. It's more of like a lion roar. It is nothing like a black bear death moan. I tell you that. It is eerie.
Here,
When those brown bears roar and carry on and growl, it is next level adrenaline. There's nothing else like it.
well, they finally go. They don't have a tag for that,
Right. Yeah.
and so they've got to get it out of there.
DLP.
And so they skin it out, they flesh it out, and they're fleshing it out, and they have to flesh it out because the hide is so they can't move it.
Yeah.
So they're pulling the flesh off of the thing. And I believe, when they got there, the plane got in there. It took all three of them to get that hide in the back of that plane.
Yeah.
And he says, I guess later on when they sold it at Fur Rondi or one of those, it was 10.5 footer. And he says it was just massive. When he got to the docks and the troopers were there, and it's like, so after his moose incident the year before, now the bear incident, it's like, dude, they ain't going to believe you much longer here. Somebody's going to jail. he says, but it's a real mistake. These are honest mistakes. I'm like, they're honestly going to lock you up, man. So he meets with me, and we're down at the cabin, and he's like, oh, thank God. And so I'm just taking a break. And he's telling, because he did all the interviews with the troopers and all that stuff. And since he bought the hideout, they let him, he had to write it up with the paperwork and stuff. And they were still working it out. And so he comes over to the cabin. He goes, you know what? We still got about a half hour left of like, let's go up on the knob. Everything there's vertical. It's like, which one? We had one, we sit there and, you get the deer past through, you can see down through some of the valleys and stuff. And so we go up on this knob. And, I should say, before we left to go up on this knob, he shows me, he's got this 500 pistol.
Yeah, 500 Smith and Wesson.
Yeah.
Yeah. He
Yeah.
showed me that fancy thing. I'm like, dude, you don't need that. He says, I do. I'm a magnet to this stuff. I need this. And so he showed me this fancy pistol. So I thought, okay, let's go up there. Because he only carried a 243
Oh, for the deer?
for the deer. And he's got this pistol. I'm like, you're a sick individual. And it's like, I've got my 338 because that's all I was hunting with, the 338.
Mhm.
And he's got this 243. And so we go up on this knob and we're sitting next to each other. He's watching one side and watching the other. And all of a sudden he goes, bear, 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 bear. And I'm like, what? And I turn and look, and here comes this bear. This bear had cut our tracks when we walked up there. And so now he's running away from us. He's going to cross in front of us, but about 60, 70 yards down this hillside. And he just let him run.
Mhm.
He's just getting out of there, man, because he cut our tracks and he got our scent. So he's booking.
Mhm.
Yeah.
But this bear, beautiful, probably one of the most beautiful bears. I've seen a ton of bear down there,
Mm.
and this bear is beautiful. And he jumps up and starts yelling, "Get out of here, bear!" And as soon as he opened his mouth, that thing turned and came right up. He closed that 60 yards in a breath. I go from sitting to one knee, and I got the gun up and the safety off, and that stupid bear is at the end of my bear when he stops. I was just gonna touching the trigger would. It's like, what are you gonna prove? What are you gonna do?
Yeah.
It's like, good luck.
Good luck.
Yeah.
This thing's gonna go right over top. If you kill it, it's gonna kill you dead.
Yeah.
And it is like, so I've just got the thing off, and all I see out of the corner of my eye there, and JB still yelling. He shoots with that 243, but he shoots in the air just to scare it. Because he don't want to shoot nothing else anymore. He don't go to jail. It's like, how are you going to explain this?
Yeah.
And so he's waiting for me to pull the trigger, and I'm like, I don't want any part of this. This is going to get bad. And besides that, I know I can run faster than him.
Yeah.
And so he's and I had just gotten out. I mean, I had a baptism on top of that mountain a year before with a ton of bears. And you hunt enough bears, you can tell
Yeah.
by the expression on their face. Granted, it can turn in a heartbeat,
It can
Mhm.
change fast.
but
yeah.
it's like, it don't matter if this changes because it ain't going to change. The only thing that's going to change is me dead.
Right.
And this is going to get stupid
Right.
because pulling the trigger this close isn't going to do anything.
Right.
Not that I wouldn't, but it's not going to do anything.
Go down swinging.
You go down swinging. That's it. But I mean, he's there. He shot this gun, this 243, and he's there waving it, and his arms are flying around in the air, and he's probably the length of this table away from that bear. And I got my gun. My gun's closing more distance than him, and that's probably about what, 8 feet.
Mm.
And he's waving, and that bear looks up at him like, "What are you?" And there's this little willow tree between me and the bear. I mean, it's probably 4 inches, and that bear just leans over and he looks at me, and I'm like, "Hello, bear." And by now, I mean, I'm not looking through. I had a 1.5 to 5 on there,
Yeah.
and I'm looking out through the side.
Right.
'Cause there's nothing there. And then that bear leans back, and I remember I look out the corner of my eye over at JB, and he's reaching for that 500
Mm.
that he left in the cabin.
Oh, no.
He's reaching just like he's just patting himself down on his hip, like he's yelling and screaming. And that bear's looking at him like, "What is wrong with you?"
Yeah.
And that bear just takes a step, turns, and walks away.
Mhm.
It didn't run. It wasn't in a hurry.
Mm.
It walked. It's like it cut our tracks. It heard us, came up and saw us, and said, "Oh, that's it." It turned around and walked. That bear, the last day, it walked down that 60, 70 yards,
Mhm.
started walking away, and we could see it about 90 yards, crawling up the side of the mountain, just walking. And he's walking, not kicking stuff around with his front paws. And I look over at my buddy JB, still yelling and screaming.
Yeah.
Still yelling and screaming. "Get out of here, bear! Get out of here!" And that bear walked, and just before he went out of sight, he stopped and he turned back and he looked. And there he looks at my buddy, and he just turns back around, and just walks away. And it's like, it doesn't impress. It's like, dude.
Almost like, who are you yelling at?
And I I said, it's okay, JB. Calm down. Calm down. Calm down. He's like, let's go back to the cabin. Let's go back to the cabin. I go, how's that gun working out for you now?
No.
I left it in the cabin. I left it in the cabin. I said, you don't say.
Oh, boy.
It was bad.
Oh, man.
I'll bet he didn't take his 243 deer hunting on Kodiak anymore.
He
after
lived
that.
by it. He loved it. He
Really?
loved that gun. Yep. He was,
Didn't go back to 300
He-
Ultra Mag.
If I'm hunting, he would carry that 300 Ultra Mag if that's what he was hunting. He would, if he was hunting the goats or if he was up there hunting bear.
Mhm.
I mean, that's what he would use.
Yeah.
But he would not for those deer. He'd take that
Yeah.
stupid 240 out there.
I mean,
It's
at
dude.
least get a 270 or a 30-06. At
Yeah.
least,
I get.
Yeah.
He went,
Well,
go ahead.
Oh, I was just gonna say, I've read that advice from people before on the forums and stuff like that. When people are asking about, what gun should I bring, and
Yeah.
there are a lot of people that will give the advice to bring the rifle for the deer
Mhm.
and then the pistol for the bears.
There is no pistol for
And-
bears.
right? Exactly. You know that, and I
There's-
know that.
There's
Hang
no
on there.
pistol for bears.
I'm just saying
Doesn't exist.
that is advice that
About my
exists
375.
on the
That's not a
interwebs.
pistol.
It is a pistol.
No, it's not.
It is.
You shoot it one-handed?
J.D. Jones, well, occasionally.
See? Again, that's called gotcha journalism. And I gotcha.
According to SCI.
Right?
Now,
exactly.
I see what you did there.
Yeah.
I see what you did there. No. Let's reel this back in. Earlier, Jeff said, I shoot the biggest gun that I can comfortably shoot. Can you comfortably operate a 375 caliber handgun with one hand in a high stress situation accurately and quickly?
If I was there with that stupid bear again, yes. I wouldn't hesitate.
There's the 4570 Beowulf, right? Which is a
Their
4570.
4570 Beowulf?
No, I don't think that's right. There's
No,
a
there's-
4570.
There's a 50 Beowulf.
No, he's right. He
Is
is right.
What?
I don't know if it's in a Beowulf, but it's
Pretty sure the 4570 Beowulf is a handgun.
they do have it.
I know they have
There
4570
are a couple different 4570 handguns.
Yeah,
Um,
I didn't realize. I don't think
That's
it's a
the
different-
one. That's
Is
the
it-
one you consider. Is the bear going to hurt, or is this pistol going to hurt? Which one's going to hurt?
Is it Legacy Arms or Legendary Arms or something like that? Possibly. I don't know. I'm
No, it doesn't look like. Yeah, no, you're right. And it's not a 4570 Beowulf. It's a 50 Beowulf. I had that
Mhm.
mixed up. I've got it mixed up
Yeah.
with something else that's
Yeah.
similar. I think.
Yeah, they do make pistols though that shoot the 4570 cartridge.
I think
Yeah.
they're slightly.
They-
they're
they
slightly
lose
different.
a ton of velocity.
Oh, of course.
A ton.
I mean, you got to think how short of a barrel that is.
Yeah.
I mean, but they kick.
Right.
I've shot one.
Even with a
It's not
6 or an 8
comfortable.
inch barrel, it loses so much velocity. You're better off shooting a 500 Smith at that point.
Oh yeah. Well, it's
Yeah.
not a cartridge that's designed for a pistol.
No.
Is the reason. So
Honestly, if I had to choose between a 460 Smith and a 500 Smith, I'd go with a 460.
mhm.
That's right. It's the 4570 BFR.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
But
Well,
so you'd mentioned a couple times chasing goats on Kodiak.
yeah.
How was that hunt?
Steep, right?
Steep. Everything's
Yeah.
vertical.
So I flew in Kodiak. It's interesting because you get to Kodiak, you pick your pilot.
Mm-hmm.
You know, and I forget his name, but he took us up. Told him what area we wanted to go to, and you pick it out and
Mm-hmm.
flies you in there. Of course, a whole bunch of other people have been in there, but they fly around and just so happens, hey, look at those on the side of the hill and side of the mountain. Look at those other ones that are 500 yards away up there. It's like the problem is yes, you can shoot them, but can you get them back?
Right,
You know?
right.
And so I had my boys with me when they were younger, and you always go hunting with somebody younger.
Mhm.
Always.
That's good
That's
advice.
good
An old fat
Yeah.
boy like me, you always get somebody younger.
That's good advice. Yeah.
Everybody thinks this great moose hunter. No, I have a son. When he stops, guess what? I'm done. And I got another son. I have two sons. My other son, yeah, I ain't going with you no more.
He's not interested anymore.
Yeah.
Not really his thing
Yeah.
anymore, is it?
He's the one with the horseshoe. and it's planted so far rectally, it's unbelievable. The kid, he walks into the woods, and I don't care. It's a monster. It's right there in front of him. Oh, look. I mean, we take him down there, and he shoots the biggest buck in Kodiak. I mean, he kills everything, and he doesn't put any effort into it. He just happens to tag along. So we decided to bring him along. So we keep telling him, yeah, you're our good luck charm. Yeah. But pretty soon it's like, he ain't really there for good luck. He's like, I didn't pull a tag for this area. Oh, let's take you anyways. Then he finally caught on. He don't go no more. After packing out the third moose, it took him a little while. We got every bit out of him. But he don't go no more.
Oh, boy.
Well, what was the question again? Well, the goat hunting. Oh, yeah, that's
the
right.
goat hunting.
So we go up on the mountain, and we all have goat tags. And it's like, okay, you guys get your goat first. And we came in at the top of this mountain. We walked forever. Of course, the same thing we were talking about before. It's like, oh, it's right over there.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Oh, my word.
Yeah.
4 hours later, you're halfway to there.
Right. Like,
Yeah.
It's like, it's wide open. It's right there. And of course, we get all the way up there, and we're right on top of a goat. And so my one son shoots the goat, and it falls down.
Mm.
And it's like, so we climb all the way, we walk all the way around to get down to the bottom of this mountain. We crawl up this ravine where this goat was, and he had to climb up there, and he had to climb up again. Of course, we're looking at it. It's like, it's not that high.
Mm.
When he gets up there, it goes vertical. I mean,
right.
bad. And you don't realize that. And he gets it, and we get it, and it hit hard, smacked the horns. The one horn broke a horn.
Ouch.
It was pretty bad. And so we're walking up this valley, 35. It was 38, 35 bears, 28 different bears that we bumped into.
That's the
wow.
We, of course, having been there, never seen a bear, never bumped into that. Didn't know what a bear would do.
Mm-hmm.
We go, it's like, bear. And it's like, we all go up, our backs against a rock. It's like, what are we going to do? We got our guns ready. That bear turns, looks at us, and says, see ya. Gone.
Yeah. Just like they should.
And so we get to see, once we realize that what's going on, it's like, aha.
Mm-hmm.
And so we shot that one goat, and then we're crawling. It's like, well, we can't go back up the way we just came down because that's too steep and too hard. Let's walk this valley all the way up. And we walk it all the way up. And as we're walking it up, 250 yards on top of us, 2 monster goats. Of course, then there's a bear in front of us. And we work around that. We work our way all the way up around these goats, and we're walking back along that same ridge line. And it's like, those goats got to be right here. Got to be right here. And we climb up on this little rock, and the kid's there, and there's that goat just sitting on the edge. And all they do is just, if anything bothers them, they just bounce over the edge.
Mm-hmm.
It's probably 30 yards away where it doesn't see us. It's looking down the valley.
Right.
So the kid gets all ready, and he goes to shoot this thing, and he's blind as a bat. And he's trying to find it in the scope, and he finally gets everything lined up. And I says, whatever you do, kill that goat. Because if he goes over that bank, I said, I can't go down there no more. I mean, we're out of water, we're out of rations, and we still got to make it back before dark. So what's he do? He pulls the trigger on that thing, and it flops on its side, and it's trying to get up. And I'm like, shoot. And he's got the gun. I don't have a gun. I'm like, shoot. And he's trying. I can't find it in the scope. I was about to whip out a knife and go after this thing. I'm like, I am not walking back down there. He finally he shot again. The thing died, and it was like, wow. And we go up there, and this thing was like, it was a record class. I don't remember how many inches it was.
Yeah,
but it's up there in the top 10%.
Wow.
And it's like, oh my goodness. And so we get we get that goat, and it's like, we are out of time. It is going to get black, and it's getting dark, and the wind's picking up. And so I don't know how far we can say that. We caped that thing. Cut some back straps out. We're going to come back the next day and salvage it. And so we took that stuff, packed it out of there, And all we could do to get back to camp, I've never been so wrung out in my life. And man, that night we were in that Arctic oven, and I'll give them a plug, man.
Yeah.
And those winds were 80 mile an hour sustained.
Wow.
And it was like you get the gust on top of that. And that Arctic oven, we had the big octagon one, so it's got like 8 legs or so on the thing. And I was watching these legs bend on that thing. But it was like somebody would take a sheet of plywood and just walk up next to the tent and wham, hit that thing. Because that's just a hard gust coming on top of 80 miles an hour. I never experienced that stuff in my life. And I look over and both them boys are, and I'm like, guys, we're going to die. This thing, because there's a bunch of water there, and it was a big pond. And this thing, it's blowing right towards the pond. It's like, but when I went up there, people told me, I took rebar and sunk it in the ground.
Yep.
And those Arctic ovens wrap right tight to the ground. So the wind can't get underneath
Right.
it.
Yeah.
And that's the secret. Pull it tight, keep it tight to the ground. And the next morning is like I wake up and those clouds are aloft, big puffy ones, and they're just moving. But it's blue sky. I mean, that wind. And I called in to try to say, let's get out of here. So I call in for an airplane. They go, oh, you made it. That's always a bad sign.
Oh, wow.
When the outfitter says, oh, you made it.
Wow.
He says, well, we can't get in there just yet. We're going to try. But I says, what do you mean I made it? They says, well, and this is on a sat phone, the guys in the Cabela's guide tent down on the water, their tent just exploded. It just blew up and blew them into the water. And the guys were, and they had the Coast Guard was down there trying to rescue these hunters that were in the deep ravine, in the mountainous ravines. And those boys are hardcore. Those Coast Guard guys are hardcore.
Oh, yeah.
They'll get you. They couldn't get them.
Really?
They couldn't get them. All their gear and everything, they came in the next day and got them in sunup. But they couldn't get them that night with them 80 mile an hour winds. The chopper was there and they couldn't hold it tight enough to pick anybody out of there. And all their gear, everything was blown into the water. They were all hypothermic.
Wow.
Yeah, it was pretty bad. It was pouring wind.
They were right on the edge of dying.
Yeah, big
right
time.
on the
They all
edge.
made it though.
They all made it. Yeah,
Nice.
Because they got them. They were on it. But
yeah.
I mean, for me, it was like, and we're like, it was no big deal in that tent, other than being totally terrified.
right. Yeah.
So we go back after the goat. It's like, let's go back and grab it. We make it back there.
So at this point, you'd only taken out a little bit of meat just because of the
Some-
circumstances. Right.
Yeah.
Correct.
You'd left, everything else up there, just so that we're clear for our
Right,
listeners.
yeah.
Absolutely.
In light of our earlier conversation. Okay.
Right, yeah.
Go ahead.
So
Continue.
we're going back to finish the job.
Right.
Mhm.
So we're going back up there, and it's like, where is this? And we're looking around, we can't find it. And it was a big open draw on top of this mountain. Well, there it is, right out there in the middle of that open draw. And Yogi was right on top of it all. Sound asleep.
Yeah.
I told my boy, go poke him. Let's go.
Right. Yeah, we got work to do.
Man.
He wasn't giving it up.
Yeah.
He wasn't giving up. He was proud of that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I was like, so, what do you do in that situation?
Right.
Mhm.
You know?
Yeah, well, and that's a good question because a lot of people, I know of, I can't give too much detail, but I know of a recent years scenario of a moose hunting party that killed a bull moose, started the butchering process in the dark. A storm blew in, very similar circumstances here as to what your goat story was. And they abandoned the butchering and quartering process. They left everything there that night. I think they might have gotten 1 or 2 quarters off in game bags, and they had hung it, like 50 yards away or something like that. They came back the next morning after the storm had broken. They had light. They were going to go back and finish the butchering and and then take out the head and everything and pack the whole thing back to camp that day. Well, they got back in there, and in one night, They came back in and discovered that this entire moose carcass that was left there, with the exception of, I think at the most, 2 quarters and 1 slab of ribs was gone. But the entire rest of the moose carcass was covered in 2 feet of dirt and moss in one night.
No kidding.
One night. And they looked at that and immediately, just back up.
Yep.
You go into combat mode. You're just watching your tail. Everybody's watching everybody's, flanks, and they're making sure that they're not going to get surprised by a grizzly bear here. They backed out, called the pilot, and they said, hey, call Fish and Game. What are we supposed to do? We're afraid to even go up to 50 yards to this thing to retrieve our 2 other game bags that are hanging. And we can see him. He ain't got those.
Mm-hmm.
But we don't know where he's at. And the whole moose is buried in dirt and moss. Like this is, and the most detail I'll give is these are bow hunters.
Oh,
They were not armed with rifles.
Wow.
I think they had a couple of handguns amongst them. And that's real empowering when you've got a grizzly bear inside, potentially 10 yards or less.
You got a pistol. You can at least ease your pain.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
No
You
kidding.
just leave one at the bottom of the bag.
Save one in the chamber.
Just save one. But long story short, whether it was the transport pilot or the trooper actually flew out there and examined it and did a field examination to validate their story, to make sure that they weren't just, blowing smoke about not wanting to pack a moose out, right? Not making sure that they weren't, committing a wanton waste crime. And they flew over the carcass, and the grizzly bear came running out and stood up on the carcass and stood up on his hind legs.
Yep.
And looked up at the plane like that, and then just, arms up in the air, just looking like, what are you doing buzzing my moose carcass, right? And so, and this is the story that I got, third hand from this party. But they said, yeah, at that point, the pilot said, oh, yeah, you're good. You're validated. I think I distracted him, run in there, grab them 2 game bags, and get out of there.
Yeah.
They left the rack, left, the rest of the meat. They had to, because they didn't have tags. They were non-residents. There's another detail.
Yeah.
So they couldn't shoot a grizzly without a guide.
Right.
And so in that event, with a non-huntable species that claims, the non-huntable predator that claims your ungulate kill, you can't mess with it.
Well,
You're not allowed to go in there and shoot it. And even if you go in there and provoke a charge and then shoot it in a DLP situation, defense of life and property, you can still get in trouble with that.
Oh, they were going to figure that one out.
See, I was gonna say I didn't realize that part. I knew that, like, I'd heard stories about bears stealing people's deer down in Southeast and whatnot.
Yeah.
And heard that you're not allowed to DLP a bear just for stealing your deer unless it turns on you and then becomes actual life.
Right.
If the bear steals your deer, that's just stole your deer. That's
as I have been told, and you know what, this is going to be a good one that, obviously we're running short on time here, have been for quite some time. But in a near future episode, we're going to revisit this topic about the legality surrounding defensive life and property.
Right.
What are your rights? What are you allowed to do? Because we've talked a lot about that here in this podcast. Your old friend JB that you used to hunt Kodiak with had to DLP that one grizzly, brown bear on the top of the mountain while on his goat hunt, right? You mentioned that he didn't want to shoot any more bears because obviously he didn't have a draw permit for it, so he couldn't legally shoot one unless it was defensive life and property. So he already killed one. He didn't want to add to that list to push his chances, right? So I am curious to revisit this and just refresh my own memory for my own sake, but then also help to educate the folks that are listening that might have a lot of questions about what is legal and what can you, what are you allowed to walk in there and push a bear off of? And if you try to push him off and he charges, are you allowed to shoot him, right?
Yeah.
And if you do, are they going to still claim that you can't do that? So
that's a great topic, and we'll definitely get refreshed up and cover that for everybody.
Cover that up soon.
So,
if you guys had enough,
I was going to say,
covered them all.
I was going to say, Joe. We talked before the recording about our typical show lengths, and I was going to say, without turning around, what do you think we're at?
2.5 hours.
2.5?
Yeah.
We're closer to 3.5.
We're about
3.5 hours. Oh,
we're about 3 1/4.
About
Yeah.
3 1/4,
that Sasquatch will do it to you every time. I'll tell you what.
3 hours and 15 minutes.
Yeah, this might actually be our longest one ever.
I think it might be.
I think it might be.
You should break this in half.
Yeah.
Make the Squatch one. We'll do a cryptic one and just break that one out.
Throw it out there on a weird day.
Yeah,
a
right?
whole new, yep.
Just add a bonus
Yeah.
episode, Cryptids with Jeff Day.
Exactly. There we go.
And you can just come back and talk real soft into the mic. Welcome back, everybody. I'm Jeff Day.
Yeah, we got news for you.
I like it.
It was fuzzy.
Well, we're going to go ahead and wrap up. It is getting late. So thank you so much for coming on the show.
No, I appreciate
sharing
it.
all your
appreciate it.
stories and your
This is-
knowledge.
This has been a lot of fun.
It's been a real pleasure getting to talk to you. So for everybody listening that's still hanging in there, so you have your own podcast,
I do.
correct? The J&J podcast.
Correct.
And you want to kind of what that is and
J&J podcast, we do it for Christian missionaries
mhm.
and trying to encourage missionaries, and you just roll in other missionaries trying to help them.
Yeah.
And it's surprising. It's independent, fundamental,
Mhm.
Bible believing, and it's been well received in the Christian community. And
Yeah.
it's gone a long ways to helping a lot of people. And
Yeah.
I encourage anybody jump in there
Yeah.
and
Yeah,
take a
we're-
listen,
we're-
just
we're-
to hear what God's doing in people's lives. And
Where are you broadcasting at? Just pretty much everywhere? Or?
we deal with stuff out of Bible Baptist Church here in Fairbanks, and
Mhm.
True Studios is where we operate out of.
Mm.
And we grab the missionaries there, but we do a lot with Ukraine and
Mhm.
other things that are going on in world events and stuff. And we try to find the people that are right in the heat of the battle,
Mhm.
Yeah.
right
definitely.
into it, and work with that. And we've been extremely successful.
Awesome.
And God's been good. He's blessed.
Absolutely.
Is your podcast on Apple or Spotify or kind of
All the
everywhere?
above.
All
Yep.
the above.
Okay, all
And
the
anywhere
above.
you can hear
And
podcasts.
Jay,
J
Jeff,
and J.
John.
All right.
There you go.
Well, folks, definitely go subscribe to the J&J podcast. Go show Jeff here some love. We're gonna sign off. So I'm sure there'll be some comments and maybe a couple of questions about this one. So
Yeah.
if you
Yeah.
have any of those, for sure, hit us up. If you search at The Northern Hunter on either Facebook or Instagram currently, then you'll be able to reach us. You can email info@thenorthernhunter or just go to our website where we have a nice, beautiful contact button that'll take care of all the details for you. While you're there, definitely show some support for us. We have some great merch out there, and we have a great partners page that has a lot of sponsors on there.
Yeah, if you go to our partners page, you can find our 3 partners share the same discount code:
Mhm.
Stealthy Hunter with also Stealthy Nutrition, Hammer Bullets, and Yukon River Knives. Those 3 partners, you can get a discount from any of those 3 companies with the discount code The Northern Hunter at checkout in the promo code box. No caps, no space. If you shop from Batum 907, our local Alaska attractants and lures company that we are very happy to support, TNHP is the discount code there.
Yeah.
And then if you purchase a Weatherby rifle and we help send you there, then just let them know that we sent you and
Yep.
just give us that little referral. We'd appreciate it.
Absolutely. We appreciate all the support from everybody. So thanks again, Jeff, for the great content. And
Thank you.
Until next week, get out there, get after it, and good luck. See you there.
All right, folks. We all know that one of the most common mishaps in hunting is damage to your rifle scope. Last year, I found the solution to that problem with the Stealthy Hunter rifle cover. It wraps around your scope and actions securely to protect it from getting knocked off of zero or even severely damaged. Stealthy Hunter also has a glassing pad and a wide variety of supplements for the outdoorsman, such as protein powder, CBD products, turmeric, and gut health supplements. They also make a lightweight trauma kit weighing in at just 14 ounces that includes everything you need and nothing you don't for all of your backcountry medical emergencies. To shop all of their equipment and supplements, go to stealthyhunter.com and enter the discount code at checkout, The Northern Hunter, to save on your order today. All Stealthy Hunter equipment is proudly made in the USA.